Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you made it, especially after the World Ride-a-thon. I imagine a lot of people are still trying to recover. With me today on our wonderful Muppet-filled episode, we have the lovely Carrie. Yay! Or I guess I should do Kermit. Ah! And you know him. I love and adore him. It is our technical producer and a dog today, Tom. Woohoo! Let me shake my hands. Let me do the Kermit thing. I'm so excited. Okay. Ooh, I hear an echo.
Not me. My tab's muted.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's never you, Carrie. We know who it is. The technical producer.
I got a lot of technical things going on.
Yes. What's it like being a furry labradoodle?
Oh, it's wonderful.
It looks fun-filled. Yes,
Can't
hello,
you tell by my eyebrows?
himbo. Seriously, I gotta be honest, Tom. You look like the love child of Miss Piggy's dog. Like you're a descendant. Best of luck. Going great, everybody. It's all chaos all day. Hello, Maggie. Made it home in time to watch. I'm so glad you've made it. Hello, Michael C.B. Chen. We know where your interests lie in the Muppets. Carrie's here in the chat doing double duty because she knows I love to say it. And Megan is here. Hello, sweetie. So, the Muppets. Okay, this was one of Tom's. Tom, would you like to do your pitch?
I don't actually remember a lot of it at this point.
You remembered it yesterday when I was like, I don't remember why we're doing this show.
Other than now having watched it, I've really taken note of the Muppets are neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little secret. Almost everyone in your class growing up who wanted to watch the Muppet Show or the movies or any of them, that they really enjoyed the Muppets, they're probably neurodivergent if undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm. Like, in my grade, most people liked the Muppets. But as far as who were, like, major Muppet fans like me, no. You're neurodivergent if you were, like, a super fan. Everybody liked the Muppets because back in the 80s, there actually wasn't a whole lot of children's programming that wasn't just trying to sell toys. And back then, while, yeah, there was a lot of merchandising for the Muppets, it wasn't the same. Like, the Muppets had a show or had all these, movies and TVs that were sort of independent of just literally trying to sell toys. G.I. Joe was literally just trying to sell toys. He-Man was the He-Man character was created to sell toys. Power Rangers Strawberry Shortcake was also from the Hallmark company, and it was meant to sell stuffed toys because they got a deal with some company that made stuffies. So they tried with the Pocket Polly, and it didn't quite, Pocket Polly didn't sell as well.
Polly Pocket.
Polly Pocket sold okay, but they thought they could do better, and that is where Strawberry Shortcake came from. Did that matter? No, I absolutely love Strawberry Shortcake, and I love to squeeze her little tummy and smell strawberries, and I love lemon meringue, and I love to squeeze her little tummy and smell lemons, so they did a good job. But nevertheless, Muppets, though, was Muppets first and then merchandise. So there wasn't a whole lot of programming for us in the 80s, so pretty much almost everybody in my grade liked the Muppets just because it was fun, it was zany. There were a lot of bad jokes in there, and we got the jokes, and we thought that was funny. Little did we realize at the time it was all vaudeville jokes. Like, these jokes were older than the hills. But, like, that didn't matter. Kids just like funny, dumb jokes, you know? It's fun. Yes, Tom doesn't have his glasses on today, Michael. You got it, buddy. You got a mind like a steel trap. Tom will see you managed without glasses today and a 200-week shadow for not shaving. Yeah,
Speaking of dumb jokes.
You need to shave your ears, honey.
But they're kind of cute at this point.
I can almost braid them. So the Muppet Show was definitely kid-friendly. It had storylines kids could follow. It was fun. It was wholesome. There was like a sweetness and a spiciness to the humor. Like, it was a little naughty, but not like really naughty. Nobody was ever like actually hurt. That whole running gag with Gonzo getting his arms and legs pulled out, and then he's all floppy. He's not hurt. He's not saying like, "Ow, everything hurts now." He's just like, "Look at what I can do." And so yeah, it was sweet and spicy humor, and kids love that. I think a lot of adults love it too, to be honest. I say a lot. I guess maybe I just mean mostly neurodivergent. I don't know. But Tom wanted to examine the Muppet storytelling style because it was such a big deal in our childhoods. It's such a big deal in a lot of kids' childhoods. A whole lot of people. And when it's that important to that many people, what can we learn from it? Why don't we examine it? That's what we're doing.
And we definitely came across some interesting thoughts and realizations watching the 70s, 80s, and 90s Muppet movies.
Mm-hmm.
And like what worked and what didn't, and what was different versus what's come in the 2000s and 2010s.
So this time around, we're going to be specifically like examining the influence of the head Muppet writer, Jerry Jewell. Jerry started with Jim Henson back in the Sam and Friends days, way back in the late 50s. And continued on with the Henson Company through the 90s. And that is where Jerry Jewell stopped. Specifically, Jerry Jewell did some script work on Muppets in Space, and that is where Jerry Jewell then retired, or semi-retired. So we're really examining what Jerry Jewell brought to the Muppets, because now that we've had 20 years without Jerry Jewell as a writer of any kind with the Muppets, we can really start winnowing out where is Jerry Jewell's influence and where is his not, and what has changed. So that is what we're going to be talking about. So I'll just go ahead and say from all of my research, what I can best figure out, what Jerry Jewell really brought to the Muppets was very bad jokes.
Yes.
So many incredibly terrible, wonderful jokes.
He brought the groaners.
Yes, every groaner known to man.
He wrote the groaners for Fozzie.
He wrote the groaners for Gonzo. He wrote all the bad jokes. All the wonk, wonk, wonk. That would be a Jerry Jewell, and I think he'd be proud of it, too. But where Jim specifically brought a sweetness and a spiciness to the Muppets, Jerry brought the bad, terrible puns, the groaning, obvious jokes, the "it was right there, I had to say it" jokes. All of that was Jerry Jewell. And we notice in the 2000s and on that we don't see those groaners, that vaudeville humor. And they try a couple times, but like it'll literally be one or two jokes in an entire movie. Like, what? It's not the same as. So it has affected all the Muppet characters in that Fozzie and Gonzo in particular, but as well as the band doesn't really make these groaning jokes, these really bad jokes that kids love to giggle at. So that is what we're going to talk about, is Jerry Jewell and his influence, and also why it worked in these movies, because everybody tells you stop telling terrible jokes. So why did it make these movies and TV shows work so well then? If everybody says don't do it, why did it work so well? That's what we're going to talk about.
And then we're still going to talk about some of the other ones, because yeah, like Jerry wasn't part of Muppets Take Manhattan.
Jerry wasn't part of the Dark Crystal or Labyrinth.
And you can definitely see a different storytelling style in there.
So Jerry was involved with the Muppet Movie and the Great Muppet Caper and Muppet Treasure Island, but Jerry was not involved with Muppets Take Manhattan, the Dark Crystal, or Labyrinth. And we really do see a lack of these groaning jokes. This kind of frenetic energy that would come with this. It's almost like taking the concept of desperation and making it like taking all the sting out of it. Because like a lot of times when these Muppets would tell these really bad jokes, there was this energy of like, I need you to laugh so bad, I will tell you a joke so bad you will laugh at the joke rather than with the joke, just because I need you to laugh. Everything in the book says that is a terrible idea. Don't do that. No one will enjoy your story if you do that.
But I mean, the Muppets are also just a very different approach to comedy and storytelling. Like when we originally saw the Muppet Movie and the Great Muppet Caper and Muppets Take Manhattan, we hadn't yet actually had a chance to see the Muppet Show that was going on at the same time in the late 70s and early 80s. That just wasn't shown in our area. But now, having seen the Muppet Show and all of its seasons, and now everyone can, now that Disney owns it, so they can even get, seasons 4 and 5 streaming, you'll notice a lot of similarities. You can tell where their writing strengths and their difficulties are in these movies. And kind of also what I wanted to show, bring to the writers who watch this, is you don't have to have every writer's tool to start writing a story. Like especially the Muppet Movie, and to a lesser degree, the Great Muppet Caper, are written as each scene is a skit. They are only sort of connected. We don't have a lot of multi-purpose scenes, but people still enjoyed them. Kids and, people who were distracted or inebriated, definitely enjoy these movies. And so it's also kind of why I want to talk about the Muppets, of what makes the Muppets entertaining.
Well, Tom, where shall we start?
Shall we start at the beginning? The
Once
Muppet
upon a
Movie.
time, there was a guy who really wanted to be on TV and couldn't figure out how. And then he saw an ad in a Washington, D.C. newspaper at the age of 18 that was looking for puppeteers.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a sock on his hand and went to audition.
Literally, he put a sock on his hand.
And they went, sure.
It was a different time.
It was a very different time. TV was still relatively new. And
Especially kids programming.
this wasn't for kids programming.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's the
He
same.
was hired for an 11:30 at night show of puppets for adults.
It was wild. And that's where, he started to meet people.
But yeah, like he did not set out to be a puppeteer. And I think that is where the difference comes from. So, of the puppeteers that I've met in my life, and I've met actually more than a few because I love puppets. I love all kinds of puppets. Puppeteers tend to, people who get into puppeteering really have a love of puppets the way they already are. They are not looking to renovate the concept of puppeteering. I think the difference in why the Muppets became the Muppets is because Jim Henson did not initially want to start off as a puppeteer. It was just that was his way to get on television. And once he was on television, and, he was on television for years, he was like, what can I do with this? Because, I think he learned pretty early that he did not seem to have the charisma necessary at that time to be on television just as yourself. And so the only way people wanted him on television was with his puppets. So I think he then started looking at how can I, change these puppets around so that I'm enjoying it. Also, from what I understand, Jim Henson's sense of humor, being as spicy as it was, he needed puppets to be more expressive than they had been up to that point. So that's some of it, is he literally needed them to be more expressive. So he very quickly met Jane Nebel, who was going to college to be a puppeteer. And they would eventually marry after several years. But as she pointed out, normally with puppets, you have the top of the head. If you're going to be motioning the top of the head, it'll be a pinky. And then the bottom, so you express a puppet this way. But that is not how Jim did it. He instead did it this way. And that meant he could go sideways and he could curl. He could do all this. And nobody was doing that. In fact, they're not sure how often anybody was doing that before Jim started, which I'm like, really? Nobody thought this would work? Yeah. But again, that's neurodivergent people. After watching a whole bunch of documentaries about Jim Henson, because there's no documentaries about Jerry Jewell. You have to watch documentaries about Jim Henson to find out stuff about Jerry Jewell. But so I've inadvertently watched a whole lot of documentaries about Jim Henson lately. And I am convinced Jim Henson was neurodivergent. Several things, including the fact that he was not concerned with other people's peer pressure. He also did not like other people telling him what to do, which I'm like, relatable. And but he put up with it if he thought he could get exposure and so on for his Muppets. As well as he just thought outside the box all the time, not just every once in a while, all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's called neurodivergent now. But anyway, so I am convinced he was neurodivergent, as were most of the puppeteers that stuck with the Jim Henson Company at that time,
Mhm.
in those interviews, like, I'm like, yeah, they all sound neurodivergent.
And also, all of them wanted to have puppets that were more expressive because they wanted something that could do the expressions they couldn't in public.
Mm-hmm. Maggie says, I always love Snuffy. Every child needs a gentle friend that is bigger than their nightmares. Yes. Oh, God. I used to try to imagine Snuffleupagus in my room, sleeping by my bed. Oh, yeah. And I think my generation all connected to Oscar later because he embodies the get off my lawn grumpy old man. Yes. As well as I was very touched as a child by his relationship with the worm.
Slimy!
I really loved his tenderness with his worm. And then I think at one point his worm's family came to town and then they were all staying in the can. And, you know, Oscar just got grumpier, but of course he's not about to kick him out. I mean, that's Slimy's friends and family. So I think that is what attracted so many other puppeteers, as well as what attracted a lot of viewers to the Muppets, is that Jim, since this is now the medium he got to work in of puppeteering in order to be on television, which is what he craved, he's like, they're so difficult to express as it is currently. I've got to innovate this. I've got to figure this out because it limits the range of what you can express.
And you can't tell a lot of jokes without facial expressions to kind of back them up and show how the audience should take it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this serious? Is this comedic? What are the... And because Jim wasn't, since he was doing voices for these characters, he could not himself express a full range of emotions vocally.
Mm-hmm.
Or any of them. That is one of the parts of doing a quote unquote voice for a character, is you've now limited the vocal ranges you can use.
Yes. So eventually Jim and Jane started dating and got married. They ran the Sam and Friends show, which that was the one that was intended for housewives and children. And they ran that for many years. What happened then is that once Jane had their second child, Cheryl, running after two little kids under the age of 3, I think, actually, was just too much for her to be assisting Jim with all the puppeteering and also running after two little kids. And so she needed a replacement. So she could still be making a bunch of the puppets at home, but she couldn't be on camera with Jim as much. So to replace her, they hired not one, but two people. They hired Jerry Jewell first, and Jerry Jewell could not keep up with everything Jane was doing. So they needed a second puppeteer, and that's where they hired Frank Oz. Yeah, that's right. One woman must be replaced by two men. I'm just saying, it's right there. It's right there. I'm going to just leave that right there on the table. But nevertheless, it was a friendship of the four of them. Plus, I think Frank Oz may have been engaged at the time, and his fiance then became involved to some degree, and Jerry Jewell very quickly as well settled down. So it was like a whole group of them. And they did several shows. They did Sam and Friends. Then they did the Jimmy Dean Hour. They did a whole heck of a lot of commercials, because commercials were one of the very few mediums that were willing to pay for Muppets. A lot of TV shows did not want Muppets because they saw puppets as being specifically for children, and they were not trying to attract more children or entertain children on evening primetime. But commercials, on the other hand, are like, hey, a puppet's going to grab the attention. Also, very quickly, Jerry Jewell showed that he was quite good at writing. And as he put it, you have 6 seconds to sell a product and a joke in a commercial.
Hey, Eva.
Hello, Eva. And so that is where Jerry Jewell really started taking over the writing. Was Jerry Jewell had all these old vaudeville jokes because I guess he loved them as a kid. And he could like throw in all these old vaudeville jokes, you know, for selling Purina dog food and selling coffee and selling you name it. And they would sell it. And of course, selling Jimmy Dean sausage. That is where Jerry Jewell then really started taking over as head writer.
And that's also where we kind of see the creation of Fozzie. Is again
Yes.
to tell these vaudeville jokes.
To be that vaudevillian. That person who is stuck in a previous time era, you know, they're past their prime, only they were never in their prime because they think this old thing is so great when everyone's like, oh, it's so passe now. That's Fozzie. Fozzie loves vaudeville jokes, and he was just born too late for vaudeville. Yes, you can actually find a whole heck of a lot of the Muppet commercials on YouTube, by the way.
And there are some, you know, semi-inappropriate jokes.
Oh, there are some very blue jokes that were in these commercials for primetime television, y'all.
Because although, on the other hand, Jim was, through these commercials, trying to show that the Muppets, and why he insisted on calling them Muppets and not puppets, was that these were not just for children. That this had humor that would reach adults. And I mean, in part, they got it through that, you know, with the commercials, and that's with the commercials they started actually getting a few spots on, you know, Tonight on the Tonight Show and other evening what do you call those shows? Late shows?
Late night talk shows. Yeah, they were trying to show that Muppets could appeal to adults, especially late night adults, that, you know, they had good humor. Apparently, Frank and Jerry Jewell talked quite a bit about the Jimmy Dean show while sounded like Jim was a little bit miserable on the Jimmy Dean show. They learned a lot from the writer's room about how to write jokes. And that was why Jim had them stay on the Jimmy Dean show as long as they did, was to essentially get an apprenticeship, essentially, of the writer's room of really how do you write jokes, because that was the part Jim wasn't as familiar with. I gather he grew up in it sounded like a very sort of, what is a nice way to say stoic and quiet family? Like, no criticism about it. Some families are just rather quiet and gentle, and other families are loud and boisterous, like Frank Oz's family and our family. Because, I mean, my God, when the household Tom and I grew up in, we just yelling at each other from room to room. Mom and Dad just be like, oh my God, let no one come here to see this mess. Because, yeah, it was just, you know, we were uncouth. And, you know, Jim came from a very different kind of family, but that meant that he wasn't in one of those kind of gregarious, very emotionally expressive, like verbally expressive and physically expressive families. And he needed to be taught how to write jokes and how to perform jokes. The writer's room, well, yes, it was full of Jews, was happy to teach a little fine art of joke writing. Now, I want to point out, nobody's sponsoring this, ever. But if you are interested in learning better joke writing, to inject some levity, particularly such, you know, deeply sentimental or emotionally devastating scenes, and then you need a little levity to kind of transition to the next scene, I highly recommend this book that is out of print, so get it used, The Big Book of Jewish Humor. Why does this matter, Glory? Why are you recommending this? Because it is filled with jokes as old as the hills that you can then just change the names. You can change the circumstances. The jokes still hold up. This is a great guidebook. Also, it's just hilarious. You'll just have a good time reading it. Look how huge this book is. It is huge. Get this book, my sweethearts, and you will be the hit at any party that you want to impress people at. Plus, you will be so much better at writing humor into your stories. And it's a wonderful, fun way to learn to do it. Yes, that's right. Look, there are annotations. This is all annotations to essentially help you analyze joke telling and what you need and what you don't need to make a joke work. My mother bought this when I was but a wee child, and I was a speed reading child once I learned to read at 9. And then I was trying to catch up with everyone else. So I would read anything in the house, and inevitably ended up reading this. This book is so informative on joke writing in a fun, easy way, not in a how to take the joy out of joke telling. No, this is wonderful. Now, if you're not quite ready for this tome, and I get it, then I highly recommend 100 Classic Jewish Jokes. I have literally tested these jokes at synagogue services afterwards.
And libraries.
And libraries on Zoom in the early pandemic. An example here, because I love you, I'm going to tell you, I literally just pulled at random. Nothing's tagged, but here I just noticed. Okay. Goldstein died of a heart attack 2 weeks after arriving in Florida for a vacation. His body is shipped back to New York, and 2 of Goldstein's friends come to see him in his casket. One of them says, "Doesn't he look wonderful?" "Yes," says the other. "Those 2 weeks in Florida did him a world of good." You change Florida to some magical town that you have in your world. You change Goldstein to a surname that's appropriate. And guess what? It's a joke that works in your fantasy story or your science fiction story. And you can have 2 characters tell each other this joke. And these jokes are so old. How old are these jokes? Some of them are in this one, but this one actually tells you the date this first was in print. These jokes were in print. And the answer is the 1800s, sometimes the 1700s. Mostly, however, in Hebrew is when these jokes were first in print.
I mean, do you want to hear the full version of that joke? The part that they didn't put in?
What you got, Tom?
But he looks so different. I know, I've never seen a smile on his face.
So, again, I highly recommend if you just wish to inject a little bit of levity into your story because it's getting emotionally bogged down, or you're having difficulty transitioning the mood from one scene to another, you just get this little book. It's little. And you just rewrite the jokes. Okay? And because nobody's got a copyright on these jokes, my darlings. These jokes are so old. They are older. Some of these jokes are actually older than America. I said it. So.
They really are.
Yeah, they really are. Pretty much
anything. And then you'll start going, wait a minute, I've heard a stand-up tell this joke, on YouTube.
But this is so early in the pandemic, I would attend synagogue services around, like in various synagogues, like we were doing Zoom synagogue services. And then afterwards, there's always like a fellowship thing, And if nobody knew what to talk about, I would literally pull this book out and be like, "Do you want me to read you some of the jokes?" And they're like, "Yes, read them." Oh my God, you would have thought they thought I was the genius when I'm just reading a book. But they're all just little jokes. See, they break them up so you know when the joke ends. So I just want to point these two of, if you are interested in Muppet humor, because a lot of vaudeville humor is actually Jewish humor, and apparently a lot of people don't realize that. But these, if you're interested in Muppet jokes, then you need to go to the source to study. Anti-Semitics need not apply. And here you go. These are the 2 books I highly recommend. There are other books, like George Burns actually wrote a book that was just his best jokes ever. The best jokes of his, 60, 80-year career. I lost count. And he came out with that a few years before he passed away because he didn't have anybody to. Normally when comedians pass away, they actually will their jokes because they have all their jokes written down. they will them to another comedian. But apparently George Burns didn't have anybody, or at least nobody who wanted them. There, I said it. So he had them published so that anybody could have them. So, and I've listened to the audiobook version of it, and it's fantastic. I can't remember if George Burns reads them or someone else, because he actually ended up publishing 2 different books of his jokes. But again, they're nobody's jokes. Nobody's really stealing from someone else. This other person did not actually write them, because these jokes are so much older than like any person who's alive. So, as I said, if you are interested in Muppet humor, I cannot recommend enough these 2 books, which I am not sponsored, but I do think highly of, and I feel like it would be a course for you in learning how to tell more of these vaudevillian style jokes. And as you see, at any point, so maybe I will, throughout this show, I will just read out more of these jokes. I will keep this over here so that y'all can enjoy the continued Fozzie Bear jokes. Let's see. Eva says, another Authortube created chutzpah cards, which she advertised as slightly scandalous Seder cards. If you're interested in the link, sure, go ahead and post it. So now that you know.
And now and that is all what led to the pilot for the Muppet Show being called what it was called, because there was so much miscommunication. Every time Jim would go somewhere to try to sell, the Muppet Show, they thought, oh, it's a kid's show. And it's like, no, I'm talking about prime time. And so the pilot was called The Muppets, Sex and Drugs.
Well, that was actually the second pilot.
That's right. I always forget.
The first pilot was a Valentine's special, which...
Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell it didn't do well, because they did a second pilot, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, or whatever it was. What was it called?
That was just Sex and Drugs. To try to, get across that this is not for kids. They were planning to make a show with puppets for adults. And there would be more mature humor in it. And they ended up actually doing pretty well, because it was a show that both adults and kids could watch and enjoy.
Oh, you're right. It was called The Muppet Show, Sex and Violence.
Sex and Violence. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And like so many shows with blended humor, the parents are cracking up laughing and the kids are going, huh?
Yep.
Along with the jokes that everybody laughed at.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what made Shrek so popular as a movie, was it had humor both for kids and for adults.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the adults didn't mind bringing their kids multiple times to go watch this movie, because they could enjoy it too.
Well, and also, Jim shopped this show, The Muppet Show, around to all 3 major networks in the U.S., and all 3 of them were interested, but eventually passed. They couldn't quite figure out how to market and promote it. They couldn't quite figure out how it would appeal to their audience. And it wasn't until Jim ended up in the UK and ended up talking to Lou Grade, who was at the time the head executive of ITV, which is technically not part of the BBC, but is still part of what we would consider the equivalent of public broadcasting, because it was funded with taxpayer dollars. That in ITV is independent. And I think it actually used to be called ITC, Independent Television Channel. And it was meant to be independent of the BBC, because, the BBC at that time was seen as rather stodgy. A whole lot of, isn't Britain wonderful documentaries. And so Lord Grade was in charge of, essentially having more off the wall programming, more non-traditional, stodgy British programming. And he apparently, that was the shortest audition that Jim and Frank Oz had, according to Lou Grade. It was literally just a few minutes, and Lou's like, yes, you have my money. I want 26 episodes. When can you start? And they were still trying to audition further, and Lou's like, did you not hear me? I've already said yes to a season, 26 episodes, which was a lot back then. The BBC normally only did a 6 to 12 episode run. And Lou's like, oh, no, we need 26. Okay, thanks. I think it was either 22 or 26. Yeah, it was in the 20s. And that was how they got their start. They got their first Emmy, though, because Jim and Lou both understood that Jim was really trying to look to appeal to American audiences. So Lou had a couple requirements. Number one, it must air first on ITV, and then it can go over to the US like literally the next week, but the first airing must be on ITV. And number two, there must be a sketch that is British centric. So what they came up with is, and you'll see it actually in the Muppet episode guide on Wikipedia, a UK song. And so what that usually is for every episode is a English music hall song. So you're going to see some of those were then put, because they don't have copyright, or they're out of copyright, you're going to see those on the Disney streaming, if I understood correctly. Some of them are on Disney streaming, not all of them. Some of them were cut for time, apparently. But there's a bunch of these music hall songs, particularly in the first couple seasons. And that is because that was a requirement from ITV, that there essentially be at least one British-centric skit in every episode. But that as soon as, it airs, it could then go over to be rebroadcast in America. And it was because it was then rebroadcast in America that in that first season, the Rita Moreno episode won an Emmy and got Rita Moreno the E in her EGOT. And so pretty much from the start, it was a hit. To be able to get an Emmy and to have that kind of coverage, both in England and Britain, as well as America, and it got an Emmy, it was a big hit. This sort of zany, sweet and spicy humor that the whole family could enjoy. It's spicy for the adults, it's sweet for the kids. This was a big deal. It finally got through to adults all over in the English-speaking world. The Muppets is for everyone, not just children.
Do you want to read it?
What? You want me to read another? Oh. I'm not so sure the young people today really get timeless wit-based jokes. A lot of them seem to just laugh for the sake of laughing. Then when they hear an actual joke, they call it a dad joke. It's cultural, right? Like, I mean, they still recognize it as a joke. I think it really says a lot more that wit-based jokes are not more widely available, and that's why, they're called a dad joke or a mom joke or a parent joke. It's because they're mostly only hearing them retold from parents rather than in their entertainment. But you've got access to books upon books. Let's see. Let's do another. While Pinsky was on vacation, his brother was taking care of his beloved cat. When Pinsky returned, his brother announced, "Your cat is dead." Pinsky was inconsolable. He said to his brother, "To tell me in such a way that my cat had passed on was cruel. You should have broken the news to me more gently. First, you could have said that my cat was playing on the roof. Later, you could have told me that he fell off. The next day, you could have said that he broke a leg and that the vet had to operate. Then, when I came to pick him up, you could have said that he passed away during the night." "I'm sorry," his brother replied. "I'll know better next time." "Now tell me," Pinsky said, "how is Mama?" The brother said, "Well, she was playing on the roof." Do you see what I mean about groaners? Yes. satire is often missed by the oblivious. It's also missed by people who are distracted, like on their phones, or they're so anxious they're not really paying close attention because their mind is thinking about whatever they're anxious about. Siri, was that funny? Yes, that was a simple classic example of a joke. It is dark. As I said, sweet and spicy. I'm gonna tell you, I've told that actual joke to children before, and they all laugh, even though a cat dies in the joke, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And they're like, "Oh, I cannot tell that to anybody. I can't tell that." And like, yeah, it's spicy.
And so we told you all of that back history to then tell you, how did the Muppet movie get made?
So, okay, some of this is going to be conjecture. Please forgive me. But watching enough interviews of enough people talking about the 70s and the Jim Henson, Jim Henson and Jim Henson Company and everything, I really get the impression. So what happened was, the Muppet Show was a hit. Finally, Jim was a hit on television, what he'd always wanted. Was he satisfied? No. Now he wanted to get into movies. What? However, once again, he was shopping around for investors, for producers who would pay for it. And nobody was interested because what Jim wanted to make, movie-wise, was not like strictly a kid's movie. And so he was having trouble getting money. And also, and this is again just conjecture. I want to make this really clear. I am just going by the things people said and didn't say in these interviews, including what Jim said and didn't say, Lou Grade said and didn't say, Frank Oz, and even Jane Henson said and didn't say, that are in print, these things. But it really seemed like Lou had a offhand approach to managing the Muppet Show. As the executive, he was like, creatively, you do whatever, but money-wise, he managed the money. And Jim wanted less control. Like he wanted other people to be less controlling about what he was doing, in part because he wanted more money to do more, cool stunts. And so that's why he was looking elsewhere for money. Well, Lou overheard on the show, he overheard some of the puppeteers talking about Jim, flying back from speaking to another investor who didn't give them the money to make the movie. That's how Lou found out that Jim wanted to make a movie. So Lou calls Jim into his office and says, I hear that you're interested in making a movie, or you want to make a movie. And Jim's like, well, yes, I would like to. And Lou said, shake my hand. So Jim did, and Lou said, you now have a 2-movie deal. Go make a movie. So, and they never did a contract for the Muppet Show or the movies between Lou Grade and Jim Henson. And so Jim felt stuck making Lou 2 Muppet movies, and that is where the Muppet Movie and the Great Muppet Caper comes from. Hence, it wasn't the budget Jim wanted. Not that he hated working with Lou Grade. That is not. Nobody said that, in part because Lou Grade was like, you do anything you want creatively, but only with this limited money. And Jim wanted more money to do crazy things. Not crazy, like bad, but like, these wild Muppet stunts that they would do. And so then Jim felt stuck obligated to make a Lou 2 movies. So that is what he did. And that is why, as soon as Jim could, he was scrambling to try to find other money, hence The Dark Crystal and The Muppets Take Manhattan and Labyrinth. They were not made with Lou Grade money.
Although Michael brings it up and we need to go to commercial. Well, we need to take a bio break in just a minute. I thought I would bring up about, so Michael was asking, what was the first Muppet? and it's an odd answer to it about, because yes, Rolf, as Eva double checked, Rolf was the first on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And Kermit was the first made, but Kermit's design was not actually designed by Jim. Kermit was designed by this lady in Leeville, Mississippi, which is, why they say, the Muppets started in Leeville.
Leland?
Huh?
Leland, Mississippi?
Leland.
Like, I don't know where Leeville is.
Yeah. It's closer to us. But in Leland. And she'd been selling these for about 20 years before Jim even showed up in Leland as a very young toddler.
Yeah, I think like the original first version of her frog, somebody told me, was actually from the late 1880s. Like, this lady had been making these frogs for freaking ever. And yes, Jim was given one by his aunt as a gift when he was a little boy, like a toddler. He was given this frog toy. The toys were not puppets, though. They were just, like a soft doll, but with these floppy arms and everything. So from what I understand, Jim took apart his childhood toy, took the stuffing out of the head, and that was where the puppeting came from originally. Like, for Kermit was him to test it, and then Jane made a proper puppet based on that.
But yeah, so they had some interesting problems when they're like, "Oh, this is this is a Muppet." Jim is like, "No, we've got extant examples from decades ago."
Yes, that's why they couldn't copyright the Kermit puppet specifically, or the original one.
That's why they made a lot of changes to Kermit. So Kermit, doesn't have a pointed beak anymore. It's very rounded now.
Mm-hmm.
And several other changes, including the eyes. So they could say it's now 25% changed, so now you can copyright it.
So that brings us to American copyright laws. So you cannot copyright someone else's design or material as it is. Like, if they designed it, and you can't copyright it unless they've signed their rights over to you. But if you change the material by 25%, that is then, this altered thing has the potential to be copyrighted.
That's why now Winnie the Pooh without a shirt is in the public domain. But Winnie the Pooh with a shirt is owned by Disney. Or why when J.J. Abrams did the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, R2-D2 now had a red arm and a different leg, because that was more than 25% different.
You mean C-3PO?
C-3PO, yeah. They can say whatever they want of, it's for story reasons. No, it's so they could make new toys and not have to pay the previous designer of C-3PO for these toys.
Yes.
Same with why the Millennium Falcon tends to have a different little radar dish on it every 10 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a few other little changes to it. And that's so they can say, but it's a different design.
So that leads us to why fanfic is sometimes frowned upon by writers. And that is because with fanfic, if enough is changed, then that is copyrightable, even though it was originally inspired by another writer's material.
Hence, 50 Shades. Changed just enough. Although the writing style, very similar.
And why Anne Rice hated fanfic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because she was trying to protect copyright. That's why she was so litigious. It wasn't for, no matter what she actually said, it was not for purely aesthetic reasons.
By the way, well, no, there's not actually written into copyright law. There is enough precedent cases to say that this is the basis American law uses. Is it needs to be at least 25% different. Every judge can use their own discretion, but that's what they use.
It's also why collage art is so highly contested, is because artists who do the original work are concerned that they cannot retain their copyright, because often with collage work you are altering it, and they are concerned that they will lose their copyright claim.
And that's what the whole that's why it's it's transformative work. You have transformed it to be different.
So that's why, like, you'll see certain changes. So, for instance, in Marvel, you'll see that Marvel movies does not do the exact same story that was already written in a Marvel comic book. And again, they're trying to show transformative work so they don't have to pay copyright to the original writers and illustrators.
Which has also been brought up a lot. Or, also speaking of why the original Superman design is now out of copyright. The S he has on his shield, that's no longer in copyright for Superman. You can use that. I mean, you're not wrong, Michael.
So it's something to be aware of. But yes, that is why they're... in fact, that was one of the big reasons Disney had an issue, or initially said, why they were reticent to purchase the Muppets IP in the 90s, was because Kermit, being the iconic Muppet, was a muddier copyright case. That was in Variety and stuff in the 90s. Even I heard about it as a kid. That was one of the issues they had. So until the Muppets settled the copyright issues with the Kermit design, Disney didn't want to purchase it.
All right, so shall we take a break?
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone can guess how the poll results went.
What was the poll? I didn't know there was a poll.
Favorite, childhood Muppets movie?
54% said the Muppet Christmas Carol, 18% said Great Muppet Caper, 18% said Muppet Treasure Island, and 9% said Muppets Take Manhattan. Yeah, I can see that.
And I will be bringing up about why Muppet Christmas Carol is far more popular than their earlier movies.
So when we come back, we'll be talking about Muppet Christmas Carol. Settle in. Hey, you know what? Do you have something to drink? If not, Cocoa. We'll take him to the backyard, see if he needs to do business.
We went just before this show started.
Actually, that's true.
Although Eva was right. If you had darker fur, you'd be Rolf.
Yeah. Rolf is like a dark labradoodle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want to run my fingers through those curls. All right. So may I recommend, if you don't have anything to drink, now is a wonderful time to get something to drink, or to check in with your bladder, or take a rest, or take a walk, or whatever. We will see you back here in approximately 10 minutes. And when we come back, we're definitely going to talk about a Muppet Christmas Carol. So, you definitely want to stay tuned. We'll see you soon. Beep beep. Beep beep beep. Beep 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 beep. Boom.
How was that 10 minutes?
I know, it went by real fast. Didn't it? Tom's still popping popcorn. But good popcorn takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And this popcorn is made with brown butter. Because decadent.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a couple weeks ago, I was able to convince Tom to buy me an entire quart of Flavicol, which, if you don't know, Flavicol is popcorn salt that they use in movie theaters. Yes, that's the stuff. It smells like movie theater popcorn. That's right. The delicious taste of yellow dye number 3. I don't care. Mmm. So good.
I have a love-hate relationship with popcorn. With microwave popcorn. We don't have an air popper. Well, we do. We got to dig it out of the basement. Anyway, because I love it like drowned in butter and Parmesan cheese. But then it leaves me with such a stomachache afterwards.
Yes, look at the beautiful dye. So delicious. We have a silicone popper for the microwave. So we can just microwave popcorn. And I believe you can microwave it both dry or with butter. Like, you can do it both ways. So, and we really like that. The puppy's moving again.
I would like to, I got to dig out my, because we got it as a wedding present and we'll be married 5 years this August.
Been a while, yeah.
The box.
But yeah, like I bought this off from Pampered Chef, but I've since seen it on Amazon, like, non-brand. But it looks identical, actually. And, it's washable in the dishwasher and everything. So because it folds up, it's a bowl with a lid. It just folds up. It takes up hardly any space. It's wonderful. But that's what we end up using the most often. We actually keep a jar of popcorn kernels stashed behind the microwave. There it is.
It's got a lid, though. That silicone lid to put on top when you're actually using it.
So, honestly, y'all, if you like popcorn and, okay, so here's what actually happened. Did you know popcorn lung is real? That is a real disease you can catch. If you work in factories that make popcorn bags, with the microwavable popcorn bags, the disposable kind. So they put popcorn flavoring in there. And even just working around popcorn flavoring, you can get popcorn lung and die of respiratory disease from popcorn lung. From the flavoring.
From breathing it in.
Yeah. And here is my issue with it. Like, because I was like, what about me? I'm microwaving it at home. And they're like, oh, that's not enough. And I'm like, but I have sensitive lungs. So I was looking for ways to get the equivalent of microwave popcorn without, popcorn lung, like a subclinical level of popcorn lung. Megan says, I used to work the popcorn machines at the movie theater, and I used to make the best popcorn of anyone on the team. I really got my timing down. I'm so proud of you, Megan. Look, that skill will last you the rest of your life. So that's when I started looking around, because I'm like, I'm not really into palm oil anyway, since they switched them all from cottonseed oil and palm oil, which were not great to begin with, to now palm oil. And, palm oil is really not sustainable. And palm oil, for the most part, uses child labor. which again, not thrilled about. So, I had already bought the silicone thing years before. Like, it was one of those, you know, it was a coworker, she's selling it, I'm trying to find something, so, you know, essentially kind of owe her a favor situation. And that's when we started making it regular in the silicone bowl. But I'm here to say, like, it makes really, like, it tastes as good as the best microwave popcorn, if not actually better. And there's no artificial popcorn flavoring in it. So just throw that out there. Also, you know, not wanting to contribute to people risking popcorn lug to make me my bags of popcorn. If possible. Like, you know, we all just try to do our best. You know that. It's just not like judging anybody. It's just doing our best. Oh, does it not have dye anymore? It's beta carotene. Oh, even gold medal has gone to healthier. There's no yellow dye. Sorry, Maggie. It's just beta carotene now. Maggie's got 50-mile-an-hour winds and snow, towers blinking. Oh dear, I'm so sorry, sweetie. But yeah, that's how we're able to brown the butter in the microwave popcorn popper, the silicone thing, and it pops in that brown butter. That's how we're able to do it. So yes, so there, the puppy's eating popcorn now.
So what people may or may not have noticed when Gloria was telling the origins of the Muppets is a lot of that's in the Muppet movie. They just literally took all the little sections of what led them up to making the movie, and they made a movie out of it.
Yeah, Dabney Coleman plays Lord Grade. It's wild.
That's why he's called Lou Lord.
Lord Grade's full name is Lord Lou Grade. That is his real name, although Lord is not his name. He was knighted by the Queen for service in television. He did not start off as a lord. He's Jewish. Nobody starts off as a lord who's Jewish in England. I'm just saying. But the Queen made him a lord.
They don't let you inherit. They don't let those people inherit titles.
Yeah, no, they do not. But that is, he was knighted by the Queen. And that is why the character in the Muppet movie is called Lou Lord.
In case you're wondering,
barely changed it.
Like I did growing up, of like, what is up with Doc Hopper? It was how Jim felt about Jimmy Dean. No, you have to come back to us. You can't leave. We have contracts. I didn't sign contracts like that. But yeah, all the Muppet writers knew to write is, and puppeteer is about themselves. The Muppets are very much those puppeteers.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Miss Piggy, who's mostly done by Frank Oz, but having watched it and watched documentaries, I think is pretty much based on Jane.
Yeah, Jim Henson's wife.
She's mostly okay to let things go until it interferes with getting something finished. And then she's like, no. We said we were getting this done. We are getting this done.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also what I noticed was like the Muppet Movie and the Great Muppet Caper have a very loose story, but they're mostly just little bits. They've just done skits for each part of the story. And, I think a lot of people get intimidated trying to write a novel because they think of all the elements that go into making a novel. Versus, as long as you can write a scene, write a skit, keep it entertaining, people will forgive a lot of difficulties from getting from the beginning to the end of a story, as long as they're entertained along the way.
Having now done so much research about the Muppets and all the puppeteers and Jim Henson specifically, as well as the dark side of Jim Henson, there's a reason his wife separated from him legally. It is so interesting to see how, particularly the first two Muppet movies, are so autobiographical about Jim Henson, his experience, the whole Muppet Company and their experiences, and everyone they've worked with. It's actually rather interesting to see that they just took from real life. They didn't know what else to do, I guess. Or maybe they wanted to show other people that they had their own sort of rags to riches story. Which for neurodivergent people is a common experience of people are like, oh, you're so talented. I love what you're doing. And yet when you ask them, to put their money where their mouth is, they're like, yeah, I don't really want to invest. And having this experience again and again, which I've had this experience now for over 25 years, of it's really interesting, or if they do want to invest in you, they only want you in this tiny little box. These are your boundaries. You're not allowed to go out of it, but be sure to be yourself within it. Like, what? That is not a thing.
Like we saw with Doc Hopper wanting Kermit to be very specifically this sales and truly selling himself for parts.
But I can't tell you how many I've had this. I've literally had this experience again and again in my life. People like, oh, we love you. We hired you to be you, but only within this tiny box. And no, we will not allow you anything else. Whether I was working for a newspaper or a magazine or for a school that hired me because you're so great with the kids and we love what you teach, but we don't want you to teach anything different than what we want you to teach. We just want you to do it with your style. Like, part of my style is I teach what interests me, that I think is interesting or worthy of children knowing. And now you're censoring me? You didn't really want me then if you're trying to censor me. Because it's not that what I'm teaching is like age inappropriate or something. It's not. It's just you only want me in this tiny little box because other teachers are teaching that other stuff, but you don't want me doing it. I had the same experience in the libraries as well of like, we love what you do and you're so successful and you're so good at what you do. And I'm like, yeah, I'd really like to expand my knowledge to this other department in library science. They're like, yeah, no. Do you think I'm not good at it? I can show you. I'll like do a whole lot of work to show you I got all this background and this experience. They're like, it's great that you have that, but even though then they go around and hire someone else for that who has no experience. They just didn't want me over there, which, what? So that experience again and again, my whole life. And to see that the Muppet movie and even the Great Muppet Caper really reflects that of they keep trying to put you in boxes and then demand that you never leave it. And then they slowly starve you of all your creativity. Like, to see that again and again, it's very relatable. I can't imagine I'm the only person to have those experiences, but also to see that they're like, don't give up. Keep trying, keep going, keep finding more allies, keep finding more friends who relate to you like that, and keep trying. It's like, okay, Jim, I will. I'll keep trying. I think that, essentially it felt a little bit like a breadcrumb trail for other, quote, weirdos to like see of you need to find allies and you need to find friends who relate to you as well. And then you need to, as a group, just keep moving forward, keep trying to find other venues till you finally hit success, because as soon as you finally can get like a big audience, a national audience, an international audience, people will love you. And I think part of that is because there's so little neurodivergent content in this world. So anytime any neurodivergent people, and now it's currently the CDC estimates that 1 out of 8 to 1 out of 6 people in America is neurodivergent. Neurodivergence includes epilepsy, bipolar, ADHD. We now don't. ADD has now been folded into ADHD. It's now just all called ADHD. Autism. I'm forgetting several. There's like at least 3 or 4 more. I'm just, I have a dyslexia. Dyslexia. That's one of them. Glory. That 1 out of 6 to 1 out of 8 Americans are neurodivergent, and yet we have hardly any content because, well, what is mainstream? Mainstream would have to be at least 40% of the general audience, and we do not make up, because 1 out of 8 people is 12.5%. 1 out of 6 people is 18%. So somewhere
16.
between 16. Is it 16?
That's how I always remember 6.
Thank you. Well, one of us will remember the aliquot parts correctly.
Yeah, 16 and 2/3.
Okay. Thank you. So between 12.5% and 16% of the American population is neurodivergent. That still does not qualify for mainstream. That is not enough for the minimum mainstream. Hello, Spence. So, but yet, anytime neurodivergent content makes it out to the general audience, people love it. But we get so kept. There's so many gatekeepers that are like, yeah, but you're not general mainstream. You're right, we're not. And yet, more than just neurodivergent people are going to love what we have to say, because what we have to say is so relatable. It's just a couple degrees off.
I mean, the Muppets on the surface do not seem relatable. The scenes in the Muppet movie look very specific to the people who wrote it. Same with Great Muppet Caper, but so many people do end up relating to it. We've all been in these familiar situations. Even the people in the mainstream have still had times where they were the outsider. They don't want to stay the outsider. They do everything they can to get back in, but they relate. They know that feeling. And
Hello,
that's
Fabian.
Hello. And that's what works. I mean, if you need to understand what makes the Muppets so neurodivergent, we were talking and we think we figured it out, which is Muppets have a whole lot of id and super ego trying to control the id, but they really don't have a lot of ego. They don't take things personally. For the most part, they, are just dealing with their id, always wanting to do something and to have fun and excitement and go on to the next thing. And they know that this doesn't always work for others. That is that super ego.
Mm-hmm.
They still want to be part of a group, but they don't have that ego that says, but I need to be the most important person here.
Mm-hmm.
Even as much as most people would want to claim Miss Piggy is like that, she does not actually want to be the most important person. She just wants to be heard. And she does get
wants
very
to treat you like respect. She don't like those fat
Yeah.
jokes. Who would like those? They're looking down at you versus pleasantly plump. If you say pleasantly plump and you mean it, like it's just nice, that nice rounded look, that aesthetic is very cute. I mean, I actually think that it is actually quite pretty. Like, that's one thing, but they say fat jokes like it's bad to be fat or it's bad to be a pig. That's what she don't like, is people trying to be mean to her. And she takes offense at it because they're just purposely trying to be mean. They're purposely trying to bully her, and she's not having it. She's not tolerating their bullying.
You saw with Eva.
Eva said, my Miss Piggy was my favorite growing up. She was assertive. So when one branch of the extended family called me that as a nickname, their intention was not to make me feel like I was too fat. But it did great harm. Random Muppet bit for my own life. Yeah, my parents also thought that even as a toddler, I reminded them Miss Piggy, and they gave me a copy as a toddler of the book Miss Piggy's Guide to Life, and I took it seriously. That there was Miss Piggy saying, "This is how you live your life." I thought it was good advice, mostly. Spen says, my son does not have any concept of shyness or introversion. OMG. He talked to 10 different people downtown and asked all of them to be his friend. Ah, so sweet.
Again, not that much ego, just id and super ego.
Right. So, because like ego is what gets in the way of teamwork.
Yeah.
Ego says, yeah, but I need to be first. That is the problem. And so not being able to control one's ego, as, do I say it? Most neurotypical people don't. Makes teamwork difficult. Versus if you can, set aside your ego, teamwork goes very smoothly.
I'm still here. I'm just eating.
Because room service came?
Yeah, we were kind of wondering, like, did you know that you left the camera on?
Yes, but I muted.
Because you were making some faces.
She come in here talking about politics in my safe space.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this is my safe space. What does that mean?
He does it all the time.
Boundaries. Boundaries, darling.
Have I reminded you today about the hellscape we live in?
I felt that. I felt that.
But yes, and that we realized is the problem the Muppets have faced in the 2000s and 2010s, is they tend to be run by neurotypicals. And the Muppets were designed by and for neurodivergent people who've lived their entire life never being mainstream, always trying to be in part of the in crowd, but they are always an outsider. And so you cannot have them act like insiders. You cannot have them act like, the people had typical lives. They have not. They've never had typical lives. Every Muppet's background is how they had an atypical life. Even Sam the Ego has had a very atypical time, but we relate, those of us who relate to the Muppets relate because they're different. And, we wonder how long it'll take for them to realize, like, that's the problem with, modern Muppets is they're not neurotypical. So shall we see who won among the original Muppets in the poll?
Okay.
As we've got 16 votes in.
Two-way tie. Like there's two ties. They're
yes.
even.
I can't say I'm shocked. Favorite Muppet listed out of 16 votes, 31% for Kermit, 31% for Miss Piggy, 18% for Fozzie, 18% for the Great Gonzo.
But on the other hand, it shows you how relatable all the characters are. We've all experienced these moments with all these characters. Miss Piggy, we want to be respected and heard. Kermit, we want to speak up and admit what we're really feeling, even though we feel very conflicted and we're worried we're going to lose our friends and be on the outside if we admit who we are. There's Fozzie with, I like what I like. I know no one else does. And, the Great Gonzo who just accepts, yeah, I'm different. I highly suspect Gonzo is Jerry Jewell. I mean, believe me, I wish I could have put more of the Muppets on that list, but...
I wish they'd had an option to have more, let alone, the Sesame Street ones.
Yeah, because I said in the chat, I voted for Kermit, but
Cookie Monster.
Yeah,
and I love. I find that I really I used to really like Kermit on Sesame Street, but over the years, as I've gotten older, the more I like Grover.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me sad that they don't do Grover anymore.
He's not
And
there.
they'll re-show old skits and cartoons of Grover, but they don't. Like, they made a new cartoon of Grover. I think it's called The Monster at the End of the Video, because there's a book, The Monster at the End of the Page, or end of the end
My
of the book.
favorite book.
But yeah, they don't do Grover as a Muppet on Sesame Street anymore. Like, not new content that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Do they?
I've been watching the past couple of seasons with Anna.
Oh, good. Because, like, I watched there for several years and was like, literally not a single Grover content. Granted, this was in the late 2000s and early 2010s.
He's not in every episode, but he does
No.
show up. Like, they do like Super Grover skits and
That's
stuff like that.
wonderful. Yeah, because, like, I was like, why don't they do Grover anymore? And it made me very sad in the early 2010s of, like, I don't see Grover. What's going on?
All right, so I did a Sesame Street one.
Okay.
And look, I know that the first one is going to be very divisive about the way I put it. But the truth is, depending on your age range, Grover or Elmo was the child stand-in.
Yeah.
And that's why I put them together, because they fulfill the same function in character.
I feel like it is so difficult for me to choose among these, though. Like, this is worse. This is like picking a favorite child.
Yeah, it's like, I know a lot of people have strong feelings about Elmo. But, Elmo essentially took over the job from Grover of being the child, of relating to Sesame Street with, innocent eyes. Spence said, even though we named our cats when I was a kid, Cookie Monster and Oscar the Grouch.
And I loved Bert and Ernie so much as a kid. I loved seeing Ernie drive Bert nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that was like the highlight of my day. Was a Bert and Ernie skit where Ernie, is driving Bert nuts. I lived for it. My mom would call me in from other rooms. Like, if I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth in the morning, she would literally yell, Clary!
And they make
What?
They make Bert have like the best facial expressions when he moves his eyebrow.
Oh, I love that. Oh God, I live for it.
And his face scrunches up. I love it.
Yes. Hi, Allie, Unicorn Fan 85. Yes, I wish they let us have more, options for polls.
Mm-hmm.
But they only allow 4. It is not fair.
And I felt like Big Bird is a little too
obvious.
Yeah. Because really Big Bird was one of the kindest ones. But it's like, look, there's Snuffleupagus.
Yes. Snuffy and Big Bird kind of go together for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love them
should have
both.
put them together, but
Yeah.
Live you learn.
Hindsight, yeah. Oh, I know. I'm so sorry. You can't use your points to tip it. I know. I wish they had that here because it would be so much fun. It's tough. One day, YouTube, learn. Yes, Mom would yell throughout the whole house, like at full blast. Hey, Bernardi's on now! And I just come running. Because I love to see Ernie drive Bert nuts. I thought it was so funny. But he drove, Ernie would drive Bert nuts, but not like in a terrible way. It would just be like a sibling teasing way. Not in a, I don't ever want to talk to you again kind of way. And I loved that it was like this gentle, wholesome teasing. I loved it so dang much, but I also love like the skit. I don't. Let's see, how old y'all are. Do you remember the Grover skit where it's waiter? There's a fly in my soup, and Grover's the waiter. I loved this skit that they would do on Sesame Street so dang much. Waiter, look at my soup. What is it? Not is it cold? Is it hot? But it's strong. Just look at it, waiter. It was a blue guy with a fedora hat on. Yeah, like they would do this, and they used to show this particular skit a lot on Sesame Street. And they would do variations on it. Oh, there's a couple different punchlines for this one, by the way. It's vaudeville. And I loved it as a kid, and I still enjoy it when I catch it because, what with Sesame Street being on HBO, sometimes I can watch the old stuff. I do love a lot of the new stuff, though, to be fair. Like, honestly,
I love how they've taken Monster Piece Theater
yes,
to really far. Like,
I love it when Sesame Street did Les Mis. Yes.
I think my favorite bit that they do is Cookie Monster and his little friend named Gonger, and they have a food truck.
Oh, I have not seen this one where they get a food truck.
Yes, they have a food truck, and then kids like video in and say, like, can you make me food that's all circles or something that looks like building blocks? And then they'll, like, if they're missing an ingredient, like the one time they were making tacos and Cookie ate all of the corn tortillas.
Oh, no.
Then they'll do like a little trip to see where an ingredient is made.
Ooh.
Which is really cool.
I would like to just point out to everybody, if there's ever a Muppet video that you would like to link to me, please never second guess yourself. Just go ahead and drop the link in for me however you have a way to DM me. And I will happily enjoy it. Never question like, oh, she's probably already seen it. Don't. I will watch it again with joy. Okay? Every and all, is it a Muppet of some kind? Heck, is it an off-brand puppet? I will also accept, like Avenue Q. The generic Muppets, I will accept all of those. Please always feel free, everybody, standing order the rest of my life till I die. You just drop it in. You don't need to explain dropping in a link to any Muppet or puppet related content. You just drop it, send it to me. Feel good about yourself because I'm going to enjoy it. Oh, an Animal compilation. That's awesome. I loved Animal as a kid. I still love Animal, actually. In fact, I think I like Animal more now than I did as a kid.
But what I wanted...
They've had Animal on those Geico commercials.
Mm-hmm. We have an animal in the attic.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. I love them. But yeah, like in that Rita Moreno one where they do Fever together, Animal and Rita Moreno. Oh my God. I was like, yeah, that deserved an Emmy. She said it was so hard to film that because she kept cracking up and the timing had to be just right to get it to work. And she's like, it was so hard to keep a straight face. She's like, we had to shot that 30 times over like 2 days because it was so hard because I kept breaking up. They were just killing me. And I could imagine. And also because to get that timing just right while trying not to laugh is hard. She earned that Emmy. Just saying. But yeah, Animal was just amazing. So. Anyway.
But what I wanted to bring up from all that is, so we've seen these early movies, like they're very skit-like. It's hard, their storylines are not as solid. So unlike neurotypicals who are like, I'm going to keep, headbutting against this problem till I solve it, they went in a very neurodivergent path and they went, you know what? If we're not good at stories, let's take some other classic stories that people love, and then we'll add in the Muppets. We will recast these characters, and that's where we get Muppet Christmas Carol. and where we get Muppet Treasure Island, is instead of trying to create an original story, we're going to take the bare bones of another story and we're going to recast it.
And Muppet Wizard of Oz, but I've heard that one's bad.
Yeah.
I've only watched it once, and yeah, I'm good now.
But you see, like, Jerry Jewell was gone. He was not part of that one.
Yeah. I just know about that one because of Lindsay Ellis when she did her Loose Cannon series.
Mm-hmm.
And she did one about the Wicked Witch, and she had that horror show that was... yeah.
Although that is actually accurate for Eastern European vampires.
Yeah, that's actually a thing. It's even in Bram Stoker's Dracula. That vampires have a counting obsession.
Like, they have serious OCD to count everything.
Yeah.
And this is actually brought up in my favorite version of Bram Stoker's ones, which was the Dracula 2000 series. In like the second or third movie, with Brandon Lee is now a vampire hunter in it. They've gotten the Count trapped in a pool, and to keep him stuck there, they have put a knotted net there, because also vampires are obsessed with knots, and thrown a bag full of mustard seeds. And what they show, though, at the end is that, like, this vampire, has had hundreds of years, and he's a super counter, so he just counted the mustard seeds in the air. So he doesn't have to get bothered. He just already knows that number. But yeah, no, it's accurate.
So one of the theories I actually heard from a historian about the Gordian knot was it was actually the Gordian knot existed and it was made originally to ward off vampires. That because vampires and other such cryptids are obsessed with knots, and that was why the Gordian knot was placed right outside of this town, was to keep that kind of cryptid from entering the town. They were really ticked off when Alexander the Great cut the knot. He was trying to say,
protected.
Yeah, that I'll protect you. You don't need a knot.
Except he didn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, but the part we like about the Muppets and their storytelling is they always take it in a direction we're not expecting.
I really love in the Muppet movie when the Muppets get stuck in the desert and then the band shows up, Electric Mayhem shows up in their bus. They're like, how'd you know we were here? And like, you left your copy of the script with us, so we read it, so we came to pick you up, take you all the way to Hollywood. Like, it is so off the wall.
The ultimate MacGuffin.
Yes, of like, why don't we literally make this a MacGuffin? I love it. Of this, like, talk about not just breaking the fourth wall, but like removing it, just dynamiting this fourth wall. Like, the fourth wall never existed. Moving on. But I loved that. That is truly an off the wall solution to how are we going to get them out? How are we going to get our characters out of the desert?
They also did a check the script moment in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you'll notice that Mel Brooks does show up in the Muppet movie as some sort of crazed German/Nazi mad scientist.
It's been so long since I've seen the Muppet movie.
He's in there.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if he kind of helped with that script, and then, a decade or and a half later, he's like, I should put it in mine. You never know. You never know. I mean, obviously, he was open to different kinds of script writing. Blazing Saddles, the end of that being this weird postmodern whatever, really does show that he was open to experimental scripts.
But all the best moments in Muppet movies, including Muppet Christmas Carol, are these very neurodivergent approaches. to the story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a little moment, but at least for me, I will never forget the line from Rizzo, "Light the lamp, not the rat. Light the lamp, not the rat." Ah!
And then he falls in the bucket.
Oh, that feels better.
Or jumps in the bucket, depending on how you want to look at that one.
Yeah.
Yes, that is one of my favorite lines. Light the lamp, not the rat.
Okay,
Be
Maggie.
careful
what
out there,
was
Maggie.
it?
No.
Whew. But yeah, like that's what we love about him so much. I mean, also, but I feel like Muppet Treasure Island and Muppet Christmas Carol bring up a great sort of writing assignment / writing trick,
Yeah, Tom's the one who came up with this week's writing exercise.
which is go take the bare bones outline of a well-known but still kind of popular story from before.
Anything you like.
Anything you like. It could be a classic horror, like Frankenstein, or it could be a Bronte or Austen story. Anything. Just take any classic one people still like to this day. So obviously, it's a good story. Take the bare bones outline, recast all of these characters in your head as different people.
Mm-hmm.
So like the one we were joking about.
So this
to give
was
an
what
example.
I said to Tom. I said, okay, a lot of people don't know how to rework a story, how to punch it up, because that's what he kept saying the other night was to punch it up. And I'm like, a lot of people don't know how to punch up. They've never punched up an outline in their life. How would they just be able to jump in? And I was like, so walk me through what is your process for punching up? And first he says, well, you got to cast it. And I'm like, and I'm going to take full credit for this terrible, terrible idea. And if you want to use this terrible idea for your exercise, please feel free. But of course, you are then socially and emotionally obligated to let me read it.
Who wouldn't watch this version?
Yes, me too. And here it goes. It's Treasure Island, the original story, so you don't have to read the whole book. You could just get the Cliff Notes. Here we go. Treasure Island. But every character is played by hip hop or pop music stars from the 90s and 2000s and maybe 20 teens. So who was it? Let's see. I cast for Long John Silver, Cardi B, and for Captain Smollett, Missy Elliott, because I think it'll be hilarious. Because really, this is about two captains. Because Long John Silver's really gives captain vibes. Okay. Versus, what's the one that Fozzie Bear played?
Oh yeah, Squire.
The Squire.
Squire, yeah.
Squire Trelawney.
Okay.
Squire Trelawney.
And what's the one? Jennifer Saunders, the pub. What was her? I can't remember her name.
I can't remember that one. At this
Yeah,
point.
the master of the
I
pub.
just watched it and
Mistress something. Let's say. So place the pub instead of being in England. Put it in the American colonies anywhere that you're familiar with, and make the mistress of the pub Britney Spears. And I think and Billy
Bones.
Billy Bones, played by Christina Aguilera.
That's right. Christina Aguilera has retired to Britney Spears' pub.
Yes. This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. Have a wonderful time.
And here's the thing, though. No one has to know who you cast in mind for this, but you now have some personalities to fill out these roles. Like, a lot of us in this, are similar age range.
Oh, the Pirates, NSYNC, and Backstreet Boys. Okay? Like, it all has to be hip-hop and R&B and pop from the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Only people from that 30-year period, but anybody you want to pick that you're familiar with or you've heard about. Yeah, like, it's horrible. This is the worst idea. This is a genuinely terrible idea, and it's fun, right? Because it's supposed to be absolutely ridiculous. And they all have to speak in lyrics they have uttered. So you definitely want to pick
Moulin Rouge.
Yes, you definitely want to pick stars or music stars who you're familiar with their work. right? You could do heavy metal instead. You could do whatever you want. But this was like, the thing I was more familiar with,
But I mean,
all of this. And instead you do the Treasure Island plot outline.
But you now have a good sense of these personalities. Of just through their music, you know roughly how each of these people act. You don't have to tell anyone else who reads this who you cast in your head.
Although I feel like the lyrics might tip people off.
Yeah. But it will give a different feel because you still know
Britney Spears as the mistress of the pub saying, "I'm not that innocent." Like, just putting that in there, and oops, I did it again. So sorry, madam. So sorry.
But you have the bare bones of the story already. You know the beats that will happen in the story.
Yeah, especially we said if you watch Muppet Treasure Island,
Yes,
so they really took the bare bones of the Treasure Island story, so you don't even have to read the Cliff Notes version. Yes.
Every decade for the last 5 or 6 decades, like Weird Al's been around forever.
Yeah, you could put Weird Al as the Squire. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. But if you take even the Muppets' take on the Treasure Island story and you recast it, rework that story, change after you finish it, change all the characters' names again. Like maybe you called Brittany, but then change it again to anything else. A lot of people are not even going to recognize it. They're going to sure think, oh yeah, you were inspired by Treasure Island. But talk about enough transformative work. That's what punching up an idea is, or punching up a script, or punching up a story.
I mean, like, and to give you a sense, like, how much did they change Muppet Treasure Island? And, but Spence is right, of like, they were very honest and genuine with the material. They kept a lot of the lines. If anything, Muppet Christmas Carol actually usually gets awards for using the most original lines from the original piece compared to other ones. Like, every time Gonzo is speaking as the narrator, those are the actual lines.
Well, except for the part like I know the story like the back of my hand, prove it. There's a little mole on the back of my hand and a star where I fell about.
But again, that's where he's breaking character and he's talking to Rizzo. And you see them having these little conversations. You see how much you can still put in your own little side stories. Treasure Island, they have an entire side story of the rat cruise ship.
Which we love.
Throughout this movie. And it's all hilarious.
They got a skidoo, Tom. These little rats in the late 1700s have a skidoo.
And a shuffleboard.
Shuffleboard. Come on. And speedboats.
And yet, it doesn't actually distract from the main story.
It doesn't at all.
It just gives a bit of levity. It gives a bit of entertainment to us. And that's why people like these alternate takes. Is what you're getting into with this story. Roughly, although really, that Long John Silver, I keep worrying what he's going to do to young Jim.
I genuinely worry about his safety. I worry about everybody's safety. That's the scariest Long John Silver of all the portrayals. And that is saying something because I have watched most versions of Treasure Island. And that is seriously.
He said go faster.
I'm getting tired. Yes. I know the Lions so well. We're all that will be, the fourth hour of this show is just all of us breaking down and quoting all the Muppet shows and movies and TV shows we've ever seen. And just like literally just posting here. It's the Muppet Bohemian Rhapsody. We're just going to like spam the chat. That's all we're going to do starting after hour 3. So.
All right. Well,
know your market. Okay. On that note, you know what? Now would be a wonderful time to make sure you have something to drink. Is it time for a snack? Have you considered popcorn, the writer food? I'm absolutely convinced this is writer food or chocolate. Maybe it's time for a little walkie or to check your bladder. Throwing that out there. As writers, I know we sometimes forget we have a body that needs to be tended. We will see y'all back here in approximately 10 minutes where we will continue to analyze Muppets and quote Muppets at each other for amusement for another hour. See you back here in a few minutes. was right there. Tom's making more popcorn. Thank you. Thank you. Tom brought more popcorn.
I don't think we have any, and yeah, Squirt wouldn't let me go if she saw me.
I think we may need to put some on the grocery list.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I have come to believe it is genuinely food for writers. There's just something about popcorn. I don't know.
But have some of these on hand if you eat it like I do, drowned in butter, because like it's messy.
I do. Oh yeah, let me tell a joke. Okay. Because Michael C.B. Chen requested 81. Okay. When Bernie's wife died after a long illness, Bernie decided that he would take a new lease on life. He went to a spa, lost 30 pounds, had plastic surgery, and bought himself an expensive toupee. As he was leaving an exclusive men's store in his new Armani suit, he was hit by a truck and killed on the spot. In heaven, Bernie asked his maker, God, why me? I was a good husband, a religious man. I gave to charity. Why now, when after all these years I have a chance to live a little? Why do you let this happen to me? The Lord replied, to tell you the truth, Bernie, I just didn't recognize you. And yes, there's actually a picture of this one.
Okay, that's a different one. I haven't heard of lemon juice and popcorn.
I have not heard of that. We do have lime powder.
There you go.
Was it an evil chicken? Thank you, though. I will take it as a compliment that I do a good chicken impression. The CBA says, it is a time that I wish my movie theater was on DoorDash so I could have some of the movie theater popcorn. Guess I will just have to put a bag in the microwave. Amen. Get that microwave going, baby. Yes. I like my favorite way to have popcorn, like especially watching a movie, is with something with chocolate in it as well, and gummy bears or some gummy worms, something gummy. I like to have all three, and like I rotate when I eat popcorn, chocolate, gummies. And if I don't have gummies on hand, dried fruit will substitute. You know, like raisins or dried cherries or even dried cranberries, like something chewy.
I went to the movies one time with somebody who got nachos as a snack.
Mm-hmm.
Nachos in a movie theater.
Messy.
Well, messy and the package crinkling like I couldn't hear the movie. Kept distracting me from the movie.
And
then
the nachos I've seen are in the like plastic or paper kind of boat. So they weren't loud, but it was, you know, like covered in.
Yeah, this was like a very crinkly clear plastic.
Yes. Okay. The cheaper they get.
Yeah. And when he ate it pretty quickly. And then set the tray down on the floor, and then when the movie was over, stepped in the container with still cheese.
Oh, that's awful.
Not good.
So I ended the poll.
Okay. Let's see. So out of 16 votes, 37% for Cookie Monster, 31% for Oscar the Grouch, 25% for Grover/Elmo, and 6% for Snuffleupagus. Yeah, there's there's sometimes or theaters on the coast that have like full dinner service.
I believe it.
The nearest one is like, oh God, probably 40 minutes at least away. But when I have the time and I'm able to stay up late, I like to go to a drive-in.
Mm.
They are few and far between now.
Yes.
I think the last time I went to one was over 10 years ago. My sister and her best friend and I had the summer of new experiences. Every time we hung out, we had to do something that at least one of us had never done, and they'd never gone to a drive-in. So we went, and I know one of the movies we saw was Toy Story 3.
We grew up with a drive-in here in town, and for some reason, Dad needed obscene amounts of popcorn.
That's my memory of drive-ins. Is Dad and the
Glory, why
little
would you
trash
say
bag.
obscene? That seems like a lot. Like, because it was a literal 55-gallon black trash bag filled with popcorn, buttered popcorn. Why? The man would go through over a pound of butter just for this. When I think about how big a 55-gallon bag is, he'd hide it in the trunk and say it was trash if they made him open the trunk to inspect before we went in.
Yeah, because some places will charge you if you bring in your own snacks.
Right. And like they'd have like you could have jugs of water because back then, radiators were not that reliable, in car radiators. So you could have jugs of water, and one of them would just happen to be chilled in the back of the trunk. And my mom would bring the Flavorite packet and a little sack of sugar. And yeah, we'd have Kool-Aid. Well, Flavorite.
Some of these.
Yeah. Yeah, this was the 80s. This was way before
I know,
all of that.
but these are so convenient.
But Mom would have a couple packets of Flavorite hidden in her purse.
And like a half cup of sugar because she was a healthy person.
She was such a hippie. So, and this enormous, trash bag of hot butter pop. The bag would still be hot. Like, and, it was always on family night where there was a double feature.
Mm-hmm.
Plus cartoons would be playing, and sometimes they'd have newsreels and stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, it was a solid 4 to 5.5 hours for the, and it was pretty cheap. It was like $2. It was the equivalent of for 2 people for a whole carload instead, so like unlimited number of children. So that's when we'd go once a week in the summertime. And they also had a playground. So we go play because there was usually cars parked near the playground, and everybody, that was back when they both had the radio station tuned, the AM station, as well as the stereo speakers that you could also attach to your car. And so you could hear it, even if you were playing in the playground, you could still watch the movies. It was nice. I mean, honestly, it wasn't a terrible childhood. Megan's never been to one either. Yeah, I thought more drive-ins would open up during the pandemic, but apparently people just don't know a good thing when they see it.
Especially since a lot of cars now can actually idle with the AC on.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, in the 80s and back, you'd have to turn that car off and let it cool down, at least every hour.
Yeah. All right, Tom, here we are. What was it you wanted to talk about?
So one of the things I wanted to talk about in show of like how you can tell Jerry Jewell is involved in any of the Muppet movies. And then also is because he wrote a lot of the scripts for the Muppet Show. And like Muppet Treasure Island have several bits that are bits they took straight out of the Muppet Show. And they just slightly changed it to be on Muppet Treasure Island. So like Cabin Fever was a bit from the Muppet Show. The cruise ship, intro, again, was from the Muppet Show. And you see a lot of these show up in the Muppet Movie, The Great Muppet Caper, even, Muppet Christmas Carol, of these little bits from the Muppet Show. And that's because one of the writers wrote a lot of the Muppet Show, and that's what he was good at, was writing these bits. And so I just want to bring up the, accept what you're good at. They knew they weren't great at writing a full story. So let's take a story that we know works well. And then we'll add all of our particular type of humor and interest to the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, I can't imagine how long it takes to pop a school's worth of popcorn. Like, that sounds like an industrial-sized popcorn making.
Mm-hmm. Unless you got one of those big cauldrons to make kettle corn. And you know how to do it.
True, those you can actually kind of do a continuous cycle.
Right. Because you're just one person scooping while the other's stirring. While the popcorn keeps popping in the oil. But I think it is important for writers to gain a sense of what they have a natural affinity for, like what kind of writing, whether we're talking dialogue or serious descriptions, setting the mood, world building, whatever you're good at.
I mean, let's all admit the truth. Jeff Jake's best skill is describing food we want to eat.
Who's Jeff Jakes?
Jocks.
Are you referring to Brian Jakes?
Yeah. God, this is a day. Thank you.
You're making my ADHD look good.
Oh, like, what does everyone remember of him? Not the stories. We all talk about the food.
The food descriptions, all these little mice and otters.
But what it helps, though, is that those food descriptions help bring you through the story.
Mm-hmm.
The Muppets are great at comedy bits, and that is what brings you through the story, keeps you entertained throughout. Because all anyone cares about with a story is that they had fun along the way, and that the beginning and end are not too much of a letdown. Like, a mediocre ending will still satisfy most readers. You don't have to have an amazing, world-curing ending. You just need an okay ending. And really, like, the ending of Muppet movies are just okay. / they couldn't come up with an ending, so we're going to have a song at the end. Or we're going to have a fourth wall break.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't think of really how to end this that makes sense. Accept who you are. That's fine. So will your readers. Know who your audience is, though.
I think it goes like this. This is what I've learned from watching so much sketch comedy, like including Saturday Night Live and other stuff. If you don't know how to end a scene, cut to the next scene. Just like don't worry about transition. Just cut to the next one. All you need is 3 little ellipses. Cut to the next scene. Or meanwhile, back at the ranch. Meanwhile, in Russia. Meanwhile, whatever. And you just cut to another scene, another location, another time, whatever. When the Muppets work, They are truly accepting of what they're good at. They're good at wholesome sweetness, spicy humor that's not mean-spirited or not too mean-spirited, and vaudeville jokes. Zany jokes, sight gags. Oh man, thinking about some of the gags on the Muppet Show. Barometers are falling, and then he's like covered in barometers.
I mean, every time the newscaster would make any joke, would say
And-
anything.
Yes. So that's what the Muppets bring. That, and of course, felt faces. And then the rest is someone else's story. Although, so if they have to, they'll just take from personal experience. Tom and I were talking about the Happiness Hotel. Now, I'm sure most of you very nice people have never stayed at a Happiness Hotel. But I promise you'll know it when you are there. I want to remind you all of the lyrics of the Happiness Hotel song. Oh, there's no fire in the fireplace. Well, I'm literally, you know what? Why use my memory?
Versus I have stayed at the Happiness Hotel on 3 or 4 different continents.
Okay, so there's no fire in the fireplace. There's no carpet on the floor. Don't try to order dinner. There's no kitchen anymore. But if the road's been kind of bumpy and you need to rest a spell, well, welcome home to Happiness Hotel. If you've got luggage, keep it handy, but you're running out of luck because the bellhops ain't too organized and the elevator's stuck. Still, if you don't mind friendly animals and you can learn to stand the smell, well, welcome home to Happiness Hotel. Like, you know it when you are suddenly at one. I've stayed at one in Nevada, where the resident meth head / drug dealer will hold my dinner order when the delivery guy refuses to go up to my room to deliver the food. And the door, my hotel door only locks from the inside. On the outside, I can't lock it. So if I leave, I better have all my stuff with me because anybody can walk in. You know it when you're staying at a Happiness Hotel. But, the Muppets, honest to God, prepared me for staying at this hotel in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And, Tom, every time he'd stay at one of these somewhere else and we'd be on the phone, and he's like, I'm at a Happiness Hotel. Okay. I just hope I survive it and I'm not killed.
And you were just always, describe it to me.
Tell me
the horrors.
Tell me what it's like.
Okay, so there is I think maybe mangy dog at the front desk. It could be a giant rat. I can't tell. It seems, I'm not sure it's even a pet or if it just resides here as sort of a secondary worker. But it knows the door numbers, so it leads you to your door.
That's creepy as hell.
Yeah. That's just one of them. Of just truly but go on, describe it to me. But yeah, there are all these weird bits, but you know what? They prepare you because this stuff really shows up. And the reason the rat cruise ship is so funny in part is because we've all heard other people's stories about cruise ships, even if we've never been on one.
Mm-hmm.
It is part of an American experience.
Mm-hmm.
What you were saying?
I don't know.
Sorry. As well as the Muppets also kind of teach you how to tell these.
Oh, I was thinking about that time that I was in a broke down car in the desert going, I guess I should look where to start a fire because we'll be here for the night. Because the Electric Mayhem does not know where we are. And Dad going, surely it won't be that bad. Somebody will be passing by. And I'm like, No, according to the Muppets, no one's passing by in the desert. No. Like, there I am literally looking for driftwood in the Texas desert. Trying to build a whole little camp area for a fire. And it was pretty obvious what I was doing, and that is I believe the only reason the state trooper actually stopped. Like, it's illegal to start a fire here. And I'm like, "Oh, have you come to save us?" And he's like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Did you not notice the blinking lights on the car?" Yeah, he wasn't going to stop. But it was because he saw me trying to build a fire that he stopped and gave us assistance. The Muppets prepared me for this. And everything I learned on the Muppets also saved us and got us out of the desert faster.
I mean, it does help to have some emotional distance from your memories to be able to go, you know what? I can make this funny.
Yeah.
Or I can use this for drama.
Mm-hmm. Yep. BA says he stayed in one of those on a school trip. It was awful. Yes. The bathroom in my hotel room was the most disturbing color of Frankenstein green. And all I could think of was, this is where they murder people. And they leave the bodies on ice. It was so terrible. One blinking terrible light. It had a safe in the room that was not attached to anything. So you could just carry it with you, I guess.
It was a portable safe.
What was the point?
I mean, the worst moment for that one was when one of us tried to make a joke with the front desk about the bathroom. And their response was, "Oh God, not again."
I made a joke about I walked in. And I was like, "Oh, this is a bathroom for leaving someone on ice and them dying." And that's when the guy was like, "Oh God, not again. You're not going to do that, right?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Y'all, I don't need this crap. It's just not worth it to make small talk sometimes. Not again.
But yeah, like the Muppets really do take their life experiences, because when you watch those documentaries, you really find out how much all this was kind of based on their lives and experiences. That's why we especially took note when in Muppet Treasure Island is literally the only time you will ever see where Miss Piggy blames Kermit and Kermit actually accepts the blame and apologizes, unlike all the other movies.
Where the relationship not going well, because like in all the other movies, we always see Kermit and Piggy's meet cute, and then the relationship's going well, and then it very quickly goes south, and Miss Piggy is always held to blame, and Kermit is not held responsible for his part of why this relationship is not working out. Because y'all, it takes two to have a successful relationship, and it definitely requires communication, which is not something we see Kermit do with Miss Piggy. We see him communicate better with Scooter. Figure that one out. So, this was the only time, and it was after Jim Henson died, and because Jim Henson was, to some degree, involved in the pre-production for Muppet Christmas Carol. He died while the movie was in pre-production. Muppet Treasure Island, on the other hand, was done, the decision to even do it was made after Jim died. So he was not involved with this at all. This is the only one where we don't see a meet cute between Piggy and Kermit, but instead we see them after the relationship has failed and they've parted.
And they truly separated.
Kermit, Captain Smollett, left Benjamina, in the book it's Benjamin, anyway, left Benjamina at the altar to hop on a ship. hi, yeah, you're not communicating. If something's not going well in this relationship, you let go ahead with the marriage and then left her to hop on a ship the day of the wedding.
And then is surprised when, she had relationships since him.
She falls in with Captain Flint and gets stranded on this island.
And
makes the best of what she has.
Long John.
Hello,
Long
John. Piggy, him too? Obviously, I've got a type.
You would have married me.
So it's a very interesting take on it, but it definitely seems like a post-Jim Henson take. Where Kermit is actually sees his responsibility of, oh my God, I led you to this. And I'm sorry. Like, we hardly ever see Kermit apologize to anybody, let alone to Miss Piggy. He might apologize to the group for not knowing what to do next when they're in dire straits. But again, that's a bit of grandiosity, isn't it, Kermit? Like, you're not responsible for everyone. And some of these things just happen, like car trouble in the desert. Like, that's not anybody's response. Accidents happen. It's kind of grandiose to be apologizing for that, as if you're Superman. But when there is something that's obviously Kermit's fault, he doesn't apologize for it. So to see that in Muppet Treasure Island, especially as all of that is fabricated, that is something the Muppets wrote in. Specifically, that would be Jerry Jewell wrote in, because that's not from the original material. That's not from Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. There is no Miss Piggy character in there. Benjamina is actually Benjamin in it, and is, I believe, either first or second ship, captain's mate. The second guy in command, second or third.
But because it's Miss Piggy, they have to have it, so they have to
they change genders. But again, like all of that relationship, because that is not a relationship Benjamin has with Captain Smollett in the book. That is entirely made up for the Muppets by Jerry Jewell. And so that more than likely means that is based on something closer to real life relationships behind the puppets. As we see that the Muppets don't really do fiction very well. They just do a twisted version of their own reality and their own life experiences. Hence, so much else of the Muppet movies and the Muppet Show. When they're not doing bits, it's just their regular life. So I think it shows you don't have to be somebody who's so super talented to do successful work. There does need to be authenticity, and I think that's where you get, based on real life experiences, hence the Happiness Hotel thing, hence probably even getting stranded in the desert at some point. Somebody probably did have that experience of driving through the desert, having car problems.
Or in Manhattan, where they're all staying in the bus stop. How much longer can we stay? Well, we could stay 2 more days unless we can find cheaper
lockers.
That is kind of, Jim's experiences and the rest
of
the
and also characters. Like where they all separate because they don't have work. So they all, go to their family or they go to other work that they have available, which that happened particularly after, I know it happened after Dark Crystal, because the executives really did not know how to handle the Dark Crystal. Like, it was bad. They left the screening, the movie executives left the Dark Crystal screening without talking to Jim, Frank, or anyone else. They all just walked out silently. And the Dark Crystal was, relatively speaking, a box office bomb. In part because, and in a large part because the executives did not know how to market and promote it. It's a scary movie, not like a super scary, but it has like some darkness to it. And back then it was believed, no, all the children's movies have to be all light and happy and fluffy so parents can leave their children unattended.
And
the
everyone
Dark
thought
Crystal,
Muppets Muppets was more of a, under 9, under 10, under 9-year-old type storytelling, versus The Dark Crystal was definitely more for middle school and high school.
Right.
And so there's definitely a clash of understanding what this type of movie is for. And so the marketing did not, talk to the right audience. Instead, like whenever we see a negative review for a book, what we really take that as is the wrong audience was being marketed to. People who had different expectations than what the story was really about read the book. Because
like there used to be this belief of like, oh, readers don't want to read badly written material, and like 50 Shades of Grey really proved no, that's not it. Readers don't care. Readers don't care.
A lot of books in the last 2 decades that are, aren't really edited much.
Or at all.
I mean, the last couple HP books had no editing as far as I could tell.
So, but like that was the belief back then of, or at least what they claimed is, oh no, readers don't want badly written stuff, so on. I mean, anybody who's ever been a part of any group of men writing women knows that's not accurate. Because this is published material. This is like Simon and Schuster level published. This is not just independent published. Of Boobily walking up the stairs.
And those quotes are from books published back during the heyday of the 60s, 70s, and 80s when there was money in there.
90s.
In 90s,
And back when there were editors. So this idea that readers have some sort of minimum acceptable grammar or editing requirements is BS. Readers don't care as long as the story speaks to them. As long as it somehow connects with them on a deep personal level, and that is not really being met adequately by other stories, that is all readers care about. And they will put up with a lot of crap. They will put up with poorly plotted, practically no character development, or any at all. The most two-dimensional characters, if it still speaks to them at some level for what they're thirsty for. So I think Muppets really show that. Hello. I think Muppets really show you don't need to be that talented. You don't need to be that skillful. You don't need a lot of technical skills. You just need to have a story that somehow speaks to an underserved audience. And the way you do that is with sincerity. When you write a story that you desperately want to read, that you want so much, and why do you want it? Because nobody's telling it you, or at least you haven't found anybody telling the story that way. That's what readers want. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, as I said, the rest is all technical crap that you can learn. Like as I said, you don't have to know how to write jokes. You can literally steal these jokes. There's books and books of vaudeville jokes. There's books and books. All of them are so old, they are not in copyright. These jokes are so old.
And if you're worried about
if George Burns knew these jokes as a child, they are out of copyright, y'all.
And if you're wondering, but the story, I know I write okay stories, but I don't know what's wrong and what's missing. That's what having, alpha readers are for.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always find among our crowd someone who will read every story. And they will usually give you a different, perspective on what do they see missing, or what is it that's not quite ringing that you can tell there's something else in the story, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Get a couple of other people and you will get more data points, and you'll find what will make your story complete. What is it, that maybe you kind of have an idea of, but are not quite sure?
Mm-hmm.
Talk with friends.
Yeah, I mean, Look, all writers, no matter their skill level, no matter how long they've been writing, are going to have moments when they get to a certain part of a story and they're like, I really don't know where to go next. Or I don't know how to write the next scene or the rest of the story. I've got it outlined plot wise, maybe, but like I don't know how to write it. I can't think of anything. All I write is crap, and they mean it. It is crap. A lot of time when writers say what I write is crap, it's like, oh, you're dealing with imposter syndrome and you're not noticing that you're shadowboxing. But sometimes when writers say I write crap, they mean it. They're just writing crap. It's worse than walking boobily up a stairs with boobs. It's worse. So that is when you go to your writing friends and you say, hey, can I get an alpha reader in here and help me figure out where to go? That is where you get your friends. You get that tarot out and do a tarot reading. That has actually helped me too, to figure out where to go next with a story. You get by with your friends helping you. But I am here to tell you, you do not need to be talented and skillful to be a successful writer. I hate to break the dream. I hate to break it, but look, it needs breaking.
Just like you always hear people talk about,
only the cream rises to the top.
I mean, have you heard people talk about Saturday Night Live? Of like just how they consider how lowbrow and low quality a lot of these skits to be, and yet so many people enjoy Saturday Night Live. It has been around for so many decades at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, yeah, most of the writing, most weeks, average to below par.
Because they're just filling a deadline. Cream does not rise to the top. That is a lie. And anyone who tells you that cream rises to the top is trying to sell you something.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to break everybody's middle class dreams, but it needs doing. Cream does not rise to the top. It's all about who you know. That is where the networking comes in handy. So I'd like to again, suggest that everybody socialize with each other. Socialize with new incoming Authortubers. Keep in touch with Authortubers who are taking a break or, have a very busy job and can't really Authortube right now or whatever. And just network, because it's really about who you know if you're looking to get help and support success-wise. But as far as writing itself, you do not need talent to do this job.
And truly, the milk that gets sold? The milk that's at the store.
Yeah. The milk that's available is the milk that gets sold.
It's not the best quality milk from the best fed cow.
No, it's just the milk that was available on that day on the shelf. That is what it is. So you need to let go of this idea that as soon as you become talented enough, you will naturally be discovered, because that is not a thing and it will not happen.
I am really looking forward to, now that Doll is going to self-publish, getting to tell people about her story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good original story. Like, it's actually original.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah. It's really, really good.
It definitely, and it uses elements unlike I've seen in other stories. So again, it's like, it's nice to be able to talk about something different, but until it's available, there's no real way to describe it. Like, you can't share it with others yet. And everyone loves Laura's little stories, even though, different people would have different ways to write it. You could take it in other directions. But she finished it and she put it out there, and they're fun. I mean, who hasn't enjoyed Laura's Christmas cards?
Mm-hmm.
And the little flash fiction stories.
I still have it over here. As I drop things.
I think she's doing an Easter version.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
They're fun. And that's all readers are really looking for is entertainment. And like to give you an idea of how much, neurodivergence being underserved, we ranked way too high with the tags for this show. Like so many of the tags. And that were just literally, Muppet characters and main Muppet things of like, no one's talking about it.
Yeah, I think at one point we were ranking 3 for Gonzo the Great. Like, why is there no Muppet love on YouTube?
And you see how much, to this day, everyone loves Muppet Treasure Island and Muppet Christmas Carol.
Uh-huh.
Everyone still talks. And if people ask me enough, maybe I'll share our extended cut of Christmas Carol, where I put in the missing scenes that you can only find like in different TV versions and a different international version.
Mm-hmm. I wanted the long cut. So it has the full song with between Scrooge and his fiance as they're
Young
breaking
Scrooge.
Up. Yeah, with young Scrooge and
Love
that
Is
they
Gone.
cut out. It was in the movie theater version, but then they cut it out for the VHS release. And then they had it as a special feature on one of the DVDs, but it wasn't in, where you couldn't play it in the movie version on one of the DVD versions.
And then also the full-length Marley's song.
Yeah, which is really good.
Which was only on TV.
So,
songs on my Christmas playlist.
We're Marley and Marley. Whoa.
Our hearts were painted black.
I mean, they are great lyrics. And I enjoyed the new poll. Let's truly divide everyone.
I saw the Muppet Baby. I remember watching those as a kid.
But I mean, Muppet Babies was kind of how
now.
I experienced a lot of the world at that age. Was these, I would always, I would relate it to the movies and shows I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, HBO would then even make a show about this for adults called Dream On, where again, he just relates to everything through TV and movies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I watching the Muppets and also the documentaries, I really understood now that a lot of the Muppets are based on their own lives. They're not that original. And they're neurodivergent. And if you don't write the Muppets as neurodivergent, they don't even make sense.
They don't work.
They are neurodivergent. They're truly all neurodivergent.
They're always outsiders. So when they try to cast them as the cool kids, it doesn't work.
And that Fozzie, for all we kind of, is always portrayed as groaners, that those puns and jokes have a place. They really do add a different perspective to these stories. And seeing that earnestness in Fozzie is always heartening. That he doesn't take it personally. He just thinks, okay, I need to work on this more. And that his friends support him. So again, we can feel hope that we could find this in our own lives if other people are writing about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the real reason that we keep talking about diversity and I can't remember what you call it, but like turning red, of having people write about their own experiences, because it's so much better to see a little bit of your culture and experiences in the movies and TV shows that you watch, so you don't feel quite as different. You can see that
Mhm.
you're not alone. You know, that was why in the mid 80s when Roseanne came on, it was such a surprise hit because people hadn't talked about that kind of working poor.
Mhm.
It wasn't that they weren't working, they worked, but they just didn't earn enough to support the family.
Mhm.
And ever so much of America could relate to that experience. That's the real reason it was so popular.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like the jokes were the best. But
But yeah, there was so little working poor representation that everybody watched it and went, "Oh, there's anything relatable." Versus so many of the other shows on television at the time were about the rich and upper middle class. I mean, Mr. Belvedere was about a family that could afford a butler.
you know, what was it? What was the one with Vicky the robot?
Yeah. Small wonder.
Small Wonder. Again, about a family where the kid has all the electronic items he could possibly want. Back when even basic electronics were incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And his
these were
father had a job where he could bring home his own like experiments and work on them on company time during the day. He was essentially remote working, but with no monitoring or oversight. He could bring home like robot technology they were working on at work. He could bring it home and work on it at his house. That was the level of this man's like freedom and how much the company trusted him.
and both of the um you know small black children adopted into rich families, both silver spoons
And different strokes.
and different strokes, again, were about rich families.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was such a different experience. And the reason so many people are relating to Turning Red is, who hasn't had those experiences as a teenager of where your mother kills you in public but you still have to go to school the next day? I mean, who hasn't been like, I've died of embarrassment but my soul is still in my body, what am I supposed to do now?
Get up and get ready for school.
Yeah, it's relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Even though a lot of people are complaining of, oh, this is appropriate for kids. Are you kidding? This is the kids' experience.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
also, I was listening to some reviewers, and they had a good point of, it was actually a smart move that they placed it in 2002 when the person who wrote the story had these experiences. So they're not trying to translate it, because the current 13-year-old experience is so different from 20 years ago that the story just won't work as a modern story. So just accept that, write the story when it takes place.
Mm-hmm.
They had mobile phones, some of them, but they didn't all have mobile phones. Versus now, a kid without, a true smartphone would be looked at as weird if they were 13.
Mm-hmm.
Of just, accept, your story experiences are at a time and place, just like everyone's. Write it from that. And people will still relate to it even decades later. I mean,
yeah, I think there's this issue with writing to market. So I think if you're very skillful at the craft of writing, if you have a lot of experience already in writing, let alone publishing, writing to market is not that big a leap from what you've already been doing. But if you are new to writing for publishing purposes, I think writing to market is a trap. Because it's learning, essentially, it's practicing too many different parts of the craft at once that you don't have working skills in yet. And so while, yes, for me, I've been writing and publishing for decades, writing to market is not that unusual an endeavor for me. It's not something I necessarily would enjoy, but it's something I can do. Would I do it well? No, I think I would do it crappy. but I would still do it. As most writing to market is kind of crappy, to be perfectly honest. People like to think, oh no, I do well writing to market. No, it's just that the market you're writing to is so underserved, they will take your crap. There is a difference, and we should recognize the difference. Versus these breakout successes, that person is usually very likely not writing to market. They are writing something sincere, and it just so happened to be in a market that is highly underserved. And so they took off like hotcakes. That is the difference. So I would still recommend for newer writers, for people who feel unsure about their skill level, to not worry about writing to market, but instead worry about writing something that you enjoy reading 3,000 times.
And it has a certain amount of authenticity.
Because you're going to have to reread what you've written about 3,000 times. The editing process, you will have to reread it so many times. So it had better be so good that after the first 1,000 times of rereading what you've written, you still like it. Worry about that. Worry about writing something you enjoy so dang much that you could read it 1,000 times and not get tired of it. Because likely other readers will also feel that way about your story too. Whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, that doesn't matter. Just something that is so, you're having such a good time rereading that you don't get tired of it. Because learning your basic writing craft skills is more important at this stage than learning how to write in a specific genre that you're not very familiar with or necessarily comfortable in or necessarily enjoying that much, i.e., you haven't really read a lot in there. That said, if we're talking about microfiction, no, go for it. Write flash fiction. Just put it on paper. Go have fun and experiment. Because you're not going to reread that thing 1,000 times. Anything under 1,000 words? No, you're not. You are at most going to reread that thing 100 times in the editing process. Because there's just not that many words. There's not that much to re-edit. You will edit it between 20 and 100 times. You're fine. So if you want to do microfiction in any genre you're unfamiliar with, go ahead, have a wonderful time. But if we're talking about something 5,000 to 50,000 words, I'd recommend that you write something that you really enjoy, that like you want to read. Something that like you're not finding out there in the world, so you're going to go ahead and write it. That's what I'd recommend. And then once you're in the editing process, if you're like, oh, this is kind of getting bogged down. Like the emotions are authentic, but like it's just kind of depressing in the middle. And the answer is Muppets. That's the answer. Muppets.
Go watch the Muppet Show.
Is it a little too serious? Is it a little too sad? Muppet jokes. That's when you look at like technical craft. Like, how do I lighten up the emotions? How do I transition? All of that you can learn, or just rewrite a joke. Whatever. And so if we're talking about 5,000 to 50,000 words, just write sincere, whatever you got that you really want to read yourself, whether we're talking fiction or nonfiction. Write sincere. And then look at during the editing process where maybe there's flow problems. That's where, for instance, you might introduce a joke or two where two characters are telling each other a joke.
And if you're saying to yourself, but how can I have that in a serious scene? I was just listening about on Pop Culture Happy Hour, they were talking about the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And they were talking about, some of everyone's favorite episodes. And one of them they brought up was where Will got shot. And, and Carlton is very upset, and is worried about, Art, you might die, Will. And I'm going to go kill those guys. And there the entire time, Will is telling jokes. He is cracking jokes while he is in pain because he's still concerned about Carlton. And that's the way he's keeping Carlton distracted from doing something even dumber.
Mm-hmm.
And so just show you, you can have jokes even in the moment of a very serious scene.
Mm-hmm.
You can still write in levity to show the different emotions going on.
You can have comedy in any kind of story, whether we're talking fiction or nonfiction, science fiction, horror. Horror does better with jokes.
I mean, it's called gallows humor. You want to find out some jokes appropriate for horror? Just go talk to a couple nurses and ask them some of their favorite jokes
Right.
that they tell each other. They're all awful. They're all gallows humor. They will probably make you simultaneously feel nauseous and laugh, and you're not sure if you should ever tell anyone else you laughed at this joke.
Right. But yeah, I think that's where the Muppets succeed, is they essentially are taking memoir or nonfiction type stories and then injecting, musical numbers and Muppet zaniness and Muppet reactions to these odd experiences. And then when even that seems odd, vaudeville jokes.
And all a Muppet reaction is it's your internal reaction. They will actually show the reaction even though you as an adult wouldn't. Like, you've been trained not to react that strongly. But inside, you're still having that. I had to ask Gloria over the weekend and she's like, speak with your thoughts and emotions. It's like, I don't know. What's the emotion when you go, oh God, it's all gone? And she's like, that's devastation. I don't know if I'd really say I was devastated. Like, I just don't like using emotions that strong. Gloria's like, please stop. Don't be British on me. And I was like, but you have a good point. Like, that, you're right. That is devastation. It's gone. And what am I going to do? I don't want to tell others. I'm ashamed and I'm devastated. The Muppets, though, show that expression externally, physically.
They say it. They'll say, oh God, it's all gone. It's all gone. This is it. We now live under bridges. Fozzie, pack up everybody's stuff. We're going to move to the bridge. Okay, sir.
But that gives your characters a chance to react instead of having to figure out and interpret what is the other character feeling. If you just let your character for a moment act like a Muppet and just actually express themselves, suddenly your other characters can then respond to them. Like we saw in the Muppet Show multiple times with, the behind the scenes of, we've lost this, or the literal theater is on fire. Okay, well, the show has to keep going.
He'll never notice. Don't tell Kermit. We just need to put out the fire, but we also need the show to keep going so Kermit won't notice. Or the time that pigs took over the show and imprisoned Kermit and I think Scooter in the basement. And one of the pigs painted himself green to do an impression of Kermit. And no one will notice. And that was Cloris Leachman's episode, I believe, because it turns out Cloris Leachman, I think, is the one who has a secret hog calling skill.
Yes, that's right.
And yes, called the hogs over next door to the livestock auction.
But letting your characters actually express themselves. It makes storytelling a lot easier. Don't make it so hard on yourself.
I think for most people, adulthood is overrated.
Yeah.
Most people think it's cool and important to be an adult, act like an adult. And what they were taught is what is acting like an adult is truly a miserable experience where they're never allowed to express themselves, express their true thoughts. And they get so stifled for so long, they don't even know what their real emotions and thoughts are anymore. And they don't know why they're miserable. Versus acting like a Muppet is definitely more authentically expressive.
And here, let me give everyone who's watching this in the reruns or even now a quick tip.
Within the sound of my voice.
If you want to know what it is that you actually enjoy, or what anyone enjoys that you know. This works with everyone. What makes them cackle? Not just giggle. What can you describe that suddenly they start cackling just at the thought of? That's what they really enjoy. Some people, it really is, roller coasters. You just mentioned, they have a new, Batman roller coaster coming just, 50 miles away. They'll smile, and, as you keep describing it, they will start cackling. Because that's how much they enjoy.
Cackling or jumping up and down in excitement or hand flapping. Well, yes, I have actually seen neurotypical people hand flap if you get them happy and excited enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've actually seen a neurotypical person hand flap at the surprise, I brought you to a roller coaster. And I happen to know the people who run the roller coaster, and you're getting in before the roller coaster is officially running. So you're part of the testing, but it's already been tested. It's safe. It's not officially selling tickets yet. And they're like, and yeah, it was like, this was worth the price of dragging this person to this roller coaster. Because I did not know they were so into it. So it's not just cackling. It's jumping up and down. It's flapping their hands. Whatever gets them so excited they lose all their inhibitions for a moment.
But us as adults often forget, no, that's what real enjoyment is. That's what, if you may have convinced yourself you like doing something, but if you don't cackle or hand flap or jump or suddenly just, have to express yourself physically, you're not enjoying it that much. Keep working till you find the stuff you really enjoy. I mean, obviously, Laura enjoys telling people her little short stories.
Yes.
Because she will start flapping her hands in anticipation. She cackles in anticipation.
She gets that light in her eye, like, do you want to hear what I just wrote?
Yeah, like that. She's like, yeah, she gets
just in anticipation.
Yes.
And there's Spence.
I like the quote. It was always for hippies, you dipshit. Mwah. Chef's kiss to your father. It was always for hippies.
But find the stuff you really enjoy, and then make sure your characters figure out what your characters enjoy that much.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you really drive your characters to go do the things you need them to do in a story. Is you grab them by their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
What do they really fear, and what do they really enjoy?
Right.
People will do a lot for something they enjoy.
Yes.
They will invest money they don't have to spend. They will have less food in their house.
Yes.
Just to get to do the things
they'll
they
eat
really
beans
enjoy.
and rice for a month to get to go do or see something that they really enjoy that they don't get an opportunity to. They'll I guess we just eat beans and rice for a month. Oh, well, because it is absolutely worth the sacrifice. No questions asked. They're not even going to blink that, of course, we're just not going to eat real food for a month.
When,
not that beans and rice aren't real, but you know what I mean?
Because to give you an idea, Gloria and I watch a lot of movies and TV shows. That is actually one of the ways we bond and we are entertained. So, yeah, we cut a bunch of our budget for a month just to afford the flat screens. Yeah. That would actually be of a decent size. We could watch from across the room.
It was 1 month for the smaller TV in the living room that we had to sacrifice all of our money, our discretionary income for a month. And we practically lived on beans and rice for a month. Yeah,
and no more eating. And no eating out either. It was always, we had to homemade and, It
was pretty much, beans and rice, canned corn. It was yeah. And then we financially recovered from that. And it wasn't even the next month when Tom found in the clearance section at Sam's Club a bigger flat screen TV that wasn't a true smart TV, because smart TVs can be spied upon by you. And I have this ex-husband that I have to be careful about because ex-military intelligence. So, and he was like, it's even bigger. And I'm like, we're going to be eating beans and rice for 2 months. And he's like, do you not want me to get it? And I'm like, no, you're definitely getting it. It's just, I had hopes for crawfish. He's like, oh, well.
But in the end, we were like, yes, look at this.
Yep.
Now we just need to get a mount to mount it up.
Right? And it was like, oh, I just happened to have one that I bought several years ago in the hopes of one day getting a flat screen. I really did buy it at Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas clearance sale on the hope of one day. This is for real. I bought it for $12.99 for the flat screen. I wanted to get. There we were, like what, 3 years later, and I'm like, it's still in the closet. I wonder if it'll fit. It fit perfectly. So, and I mean, I've never regretted those 3 months of eating beans and rice and canned corn and whatever we found in the bottom of the deep freeze. We found some weird things. Because a friend had actually given me the deep freeze, but I had to take everything that was in the deep freeze. So this was not our food. So it was truly like, what are we going to discover in this deep freeze? The answer was like 20-year-old frozen blueberries.
It was only like 8 years old at that point. It may still be hiding in that deep freeze.
So yeah, the things that you're willing, you know, like you don't even question, like, of course I'm going to sacrifice for it. Those are definitely ways to figure out your character's motivations. And maybe that's a really good part of your character surveys or interviews is what are they willing, like, to drop of the hat sacrifice for enjoyment things, and what are they willing to sacrifice at the drop of the hat for fear-based things. Hey, Cherry Panda. So asking yourself about your characters, what are they willing to sacrifice for joyful things? And what are they willing to sacrifice for fear-based things? And what would make them be willing to sacrifice? So yes, for us, having an obnoxiously enormous TV.
But also, like, I've known other people that they are willing to sacrifice for clothing because one of their greatest fears is being, you know, not well dressed to meet other people. To just be seen, you know, in their house clothing is just such a fear. No, they will sacrifice just to make sure they have higher quality clothing. Of like, what is their fears, their greatest fears that they want to avoid, and what is that they want the most? I mean, back, you know, 2 decades ago, you know, speaking of Turning Red, a bunch of sacrifices were made just to get our little sister, you know, to, what was it, NSYNC?
I think it was NSYNC. NSYNC.
In concert.
In concert was performing in Memphis. And she was
6 hours away just
failing.
driving.
She was failing algebra. High school algebra. And I said, if you can pull it up to a B and keep a B through because like the first 9 weeks, she was failing. She was getting D's. She got a D and an F. And I was like, so if you can get a B, she'll pass. You know, she can get a B the third 9 weeks and the fourth 9 weeks. She'll pass for the year and she won't have to repeat. So I told her, if you can keep a B and actually attend the tutoring classes after school once to twice a week. I think it was twice a week. If you attend those and you can pull up to a B for both 9 weeks, I will personally pay all expenses. I will pay for the trip up there, the hotel, and the tickets, if you know, to NSYNC. But then what happened was I was also in college, and it turned out when they changed their performing date. Originally they were going to perform at the end of May and they moved it up 2 weeks. So it was during my end of semester tests. So my then husband had to take instead and took her up there. And
he sat in the parking lot with all the other dads. He was the only one not driving a van.
He's like, literally there was a tailgating out in the Coliseum parking lot. All these dads with minivans tailgating, and all the teenage kids, all the middle school and high school kids in the Coliseum. He's like, it was great. He's like, there were people. He's like, there were men actually grilling sausages and hot dogs. Glory, it was wonderful.
And they all agreed. Aren't you glad we're not in there hearing the screams up close?
Like, because you could hear the screams from the far side of the parking lot of the Coliseum. Like, just you could hear the performance and all the screams of tens of thousands of teenagers.
And there was some line like, like, oh, I think someone just found their puberty.
Yeah.
Because apparently occasionally one girl would scream so loudly and harshly.
You just hear one voice rise above the rest all of a sudden sometimes. But like I was willing to sacrifice that so my sister didn't have to repeat that class or that year. And she was willing to do all that work to go to this concert and be able to say that she went to the concert. We even were able to scrounge up some money so she could buy some merch there because, it's kind of part of the experience. I always get a souvenir or something. And, have that overnight stay, yeah, all right, it was a crappy motel. But I mean, it wasn't the happiness hotel level, I was assured. There were clean but nevertheless, she was willing to do all this work for like 4.5 months to pull up her grade in a class that she hated with a teacher she really did not get along with. To do that, but that was such a strong motivator for her. And it's decades later, she still talks about this dang concert. Anytime she's actually talking to me, which is, only once a decade, she still brings up this concert. She still brings up what an amazing time, and it was totally worth all the effort.
Not the only one, see?
Yeah, Kale stuffed newspapers to be able to see Backstreets back in 99. Yeah. Or I stuffed. Okay, sorry. I stuffed. Yeah, exactly. Of like, think about the things you would sacrifice time, energy, money, whatever you value to do for joyful things. And that you need to know that about your own characters as well. Also, it will help you paint a more three-dimensional picture for your characters in scenes, since you now know that about them and you could maybe somehow play that into a scene. Like when one character mentions, oh, well, we were thinking about, getting a bigger flat screen, but I've got, a 48-inch flat screen, but I don't know anybody who wants one. And, the other character who really wants flat screens, like, how much are you asking for? Like, oh, I don't know, 100? And then there's the person going, will you give me 20 minutes to go to the ATM right this minute? You can put that in, find a way to fit something like that in a scene, even if you do later cut it out. But knowing that about your characters, you really can paint a more relatable picture for your readers. They will appreciate that. They will feel so much more connected with those characters to have that. And also maybe, you know what? Guess what? Writing is therapy. So think about that about yourself. So you better have a better understanding of what are you willing to move heaven and earth for? I knew somebody who I worked with this person. They were a total capital B. I did not like her. She was so ugly to everybody. She was just an unpleasant person. And then I found out really by accident in conversation with somebody it was a whole group of us, that her favorite food on the whole planet was lemon bars. And I said, oh, you like lemon bars? And she's like, yeah, what of it? And I was like, I love lemon bars too. I was actually just thinking about making lemon bars this month. But the only reason I haven't already is because I don't need to eat a pan of lemon bars by myself, because I will. Because I like lemon bars that much. If I made them, would you be willing to take half the pan? And she goggled at me for a solid 20 awkward seconds. And then said, how much you want for it? And I was like, nothing. You just have to be willing to take it so I don't eat it. And she's like, no, but really, how much? $20? And I was like, you could just have it, but if you really want to spend money, I guess you could donate to a charity in my name. I don't know. And, I was sure she was like, okay, well, I will take it. And I was like, cool. The next weekend, I made the lemon bars, put half, packaged it up, left it on her desk at work. Didn't want to talk to her because, again, do not like this person. They are not a pleasant person. They're miserable. You would think this person, after they had half a pan of lemon bars, y'all, turned into a golden retriever. And it was like getting uncomfortable sometimes, because sometimes she'd come up to me and just stroke my arm. And that's how I knew she was nearby. She's like, hi, Chloe. I'm like, hi. What the hell? What happened? This miserable damn person who's always bitching and always that whole scarcity idea, like everybody wants something. And just was suddenly like the sweetest, warmest, fluffiest, furriest person around me for the entire rest of the time I worked at this job. And people thought, like, what happened to y'all's relationship? Because I saw how much she hated you before. And I'm like, yeah, she did hate me, didn't she? And yeah, like, and like, it turned out she liked lemon everything, though. And I was like, oh, I was going to make a lemon pound cake. Can I interest you in half of lemon pound cake? And she was like, yeah. And she's like, here's my phone number. You can just call me and I will pick it up from your house on the weekend. Because, you know, she knew I mostly baked on the weekends. And I was like, oh, that would make it even easier because then I don't have to worry about dragging it to work. And, you know, would regularly come, you know, by when I messaged her or called her. It's like, hey, if you could just pick it up, I'll just leave it outside on my porch table for you. And just pick it up. Because, again, I did not want to talk to her. I did not like her. But I also did not want to eat all of this. Because I love to bake, and I love to eat. I just don't need the temptation. And it was so interesting to see that this was somebody who she apparently was no good at baking, or at least thought she was no good. And other people did not bake for her, or there was nobody in her life who did. And she thought like that there was so much love in what I was baking for her. She's like, this is the best I've ever tasted of every single thing. And I mean, it's not like I know how to bake without love. I really don't.
Or also how to bake with, you know, the most flavor you can squeeze into it.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, like, I'm going to eat the other half of each of these dishes, so they're going to taste good. But yeah, like, she loved these things, and no one ever did this for her. She said I was the first person to ever bake her something knowing she liked it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that your family is like this. My family sucks too, but in different ways. But like,
I believe in your family. It was you just understood your family wasn't very good at baking, so it's like, if y'all will just get me the supplies, I will take it as you made this for me, and I will then make it so it tastes the best I like.
How about all the bad gift giving from my family?
Oh, so bad.
Like, do you even know me or love me? Bad gift giving. Like, if you give someone the exact opposite of the thing they said they wanted, and so it's the opposite of what they wanted, and you like are like, why aren't you grateful and happy? It's like, because you got me the opposite.
I mean, it did make a lot more sense though once we found out that the human mind does not store the word not, no, or negative form, or, you know, just the negative of things. So you should never try to remember something as somebody doesn't like this. Because the brain, after a short while, will actually convert that to does like this. Like, really, only think about the positive form of statements. Now, you can say avoid. Someone, you know, this person avoids this, because that's still an active, you know, positive form of word.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, do not store things in negative.
The point I was just simply trying to make is how much this person's personality really changed. And honestly, a lot of people at work remarked, because I worked at a big corporation at the time, relatively big, how much her personality started warming up to everyone after I gave her several baked goods, lemon flavored baked goods, partly because she would mention to other people of like, they were like, oh, what did Glory bring you? And, you know, she's like, oh, lemon pound cake or lemon bar or whatever. And they're like, oh, you like lemons? And she's like, yeah, I love anything with lemons. I love lemon perfume. I love everything. And so other people at work actually started bringing her like little lemon erasers and things, you know, that they'd find, you know, just, I mean, I worked with relatively nice people. And like her personality at work really started evolving because she finally kind of like a little bit of that exterior cracked, and we all started learning things about her that were significant to her that we could, show her we care, or at least that we haven't forgotten about her. And then she started really warming up. And really, by the time I left that job, she just seemed like such a different person. But it had to do with this whole kind of evolution at the workplace about, some people finally were able to get to know her a little. And then the more they got to know her, the more she relaxed and warmed up. And the more she relaxed and warmed up, the more she told about herself, the more other people could show they remembered and thought of her. And it was like, I bring it up just to illustrate like how you can show the growth of a character through this idea of what brings them real joy. And it can be anything, including lemons. It could be literally anything that just really is a trigger point of happiness for them. Michael CB Chen said, I was knocked out there for a few years.
I was conked out.
For a few years. Oh, I guess I was still tired from the weekends, right-a-thon? Yes. So, like,
and to give you a sense of like an easy way to put this into your stories, one I've actually seen, and I have to admit in the end was kind of funny, was someone who always said whenever the pizza was served, like, oh, I hate pepperoni pizza. I'm like, what about cheese pizza? It's okay. Like, so everyone just assumed they didn't like pizza.
Right.
No one in over a year ever asked them, so you don't like pizza? No, they just assumed. So they, they wouldn't really even count this person in when they were, doing pizzas.
Mm-hmm.
Someone finally asked, they're like, so what is it you like? And they responded, I like vegetable pizza. And everyone's like, oh. But all they ever heard was, I don't like pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, or cheese.
And cheese is okay. And so it just, everyone assumed, oh, you don't like pizza, versus the truth of, no, they like a different topping.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to see this happen in all kinds of relationships where you only ever hear the negative form and no one ever then asks them, well, what is it you do like?
Right. So, like, there is something to think about. But again, I want to remind everybody as we wrap up, the exercise for this week, if you choose to accept your mission, is to take any kind of classic story you're familiar with, that you're very familiar with. Maybe even sketch out all the beats, the basic beats of that story. And then punch it up. So you're going to recast it. And you can recast anybody on the planet you want in these roles. And maybe even place it slightly differently. Like if it takes place in England, you could place it in America. Or you could place it in Brazil, if you're familiar with Brazil. Or anywhere, you want. You could place it in your town if you want. And really have fun punching up that story. You do not have to obviously write the whole thing out. But essentially, if you already have the beats written out of this story, you can then redo it and do a treatment. And a treatment is where you take a basic plot outline, and each scene you write 1 to 4 sentences describing the scene, maybe with a line of dialogue that you want to be sure to remember. Anything like that, and writing that out. And that's a treatment. So that you can have essentially a basic, somebody else could read it and know how the whole thing goes. That's the point of a treatment. That is your exercise for this week, if you choose to accept it. If you do, of course, we would absolutely love to know how it went. And after the show, we are going to go over to our Unicorn Council Discord server in the voice chat in the clubhouse.
You want to see how the last poll went?
Sure.
I was surprised for the favorite Muppets group, like how it was a 2-way tie between the original Muppets and Muppet Babies, with 33% each. And then Sesame Street got 25% and Fraggle Rock got 8%.
Excellent.
I was just thinking of who all showed up in Muppet Family Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
But I was surprised to see the Muppet Babies held on so well.
It was a good show. I love Nanny.
It was well done, yeah.
So, does anybody have last thoughts about the Muppets or anything before I talk about next week's show? Is there anything more, Carrie, that you have to say about Muppet Treasure Island or any of the Muppets that you didn't get to say?
We've got cabin fever.
We got cabin fever. We got cabin fever.
Is no one going to talk about what just happened?
No, we're moving on. Okay. Next week, March 28th, it will be our last episode of this season. What are we doing in April? We have no idea. Tom and I actually have to talk about this. But sometime soon. And once we know what we're doing, we will post that on the Discord server as well. So that if anybody wants to join us, they can tell us at that point before I start figuring out the actual schedule and all that good stuff. Or if you know now you want to join us, but you're like, these are the things I want to talk about, then I can figure out like how to fit you in. We could do that. I'm open. Because I would love to have more guests. Okay, so next Monday, the 28th, we're going to talk about science fiction short films. So that means we're going to talk about science fiction short story writing. The three short films we're going to specifically talk about and analyze are in the playlist listed down below. And they are at the end of the playlist. And it is Genghis Khan Conquers the Moon, The Trail's End, and Spice Frontier. Spice Frontier is animated. So we are going to talk about science fiction short stories and putting in a little bit of science fiction into your stories. How to fit that into an otherwise non-science-y story. It'll be a wild ride. It's actually really not hard at all, I promise.
And for those of you, who may not think about it, but fantasy works the same way as sci-fi. These are good lessons for both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, science is used almost like a magic system in science fiction. But I mean, even just adding a little bit of technology to your story is injecting a bit of sci-fi, especially technology that does not currently exist. Such as, and here's one, this I thought of when I was a teenager, and it still does not fully exist, and I'm disappointed. And that is being able to adjust your lenses to change the prescription. There is a way to do it. What you do is you sandwich two thin lenses, and you have to have a refractoring fluid in between them. And the more you squeeze or open it up to let the fluid move around, I mean, it would be static most of the time, but that actually adjusts the refractory lens prescription, and yet it does not exist. Let me tell you how useful it will be for children whose eyesight still continues to change as they age, so their parents don't have to constantly buy them new glasses.
And she gave me an idea of where science fiction can pop up anywhere. There's a movie from the early 2010s, or was it late 2000s? I want to say it was The Nice Guys, which is just a police procedural type, Starsky and Hutch movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a piece of technology in there that they find the bad guys with a little app called Facebacker that puts faces to the back of people's heads. And that's some true sci-fi tech right there. Oh, the back of someone's head tells you what their face looks like.
I once read a short science fiction story that was originally written, I think, in the late 40s, early 50s. It's supposed to take place in the late 1980s. And in it the housewife is doing stuff in the house, and she realizes as she's trying to make dinner that she's out of an ingredient, and she just calls the grocery store and says, please send me 3 pounds of flour. And there was a pneumatic tube that connects the grocery store to her house, and her groceries arrived, like her flour, and I think she maybe ordered one other thing, and a receipt that it had been added to her tab to pay it when she arrives at the grocery store the next time. And that was, you know, science fiction. Otherwise, it was actually a fairly kind of contemporary, kind of a slice of life story. But the science fiction-y part was the pneumatic tubes that were connected to houses all over the area for neighborhood grocery stores. And I told my mother about it, and this was a long time. This was, I think I was a teenager or in my early 20s. She's like, I miss the 40s and 50s when we thought the 80s and 90s were going to be so cool. And instead, we got sliding grocery store doors.
Yeah, pretty much that is sort of what the Amazon button is supposed to be.
Except, like, this was, like, all over the country in the story, and like Amazon drones are not available in my area.
I say it's now closer to like how you can through DoorDash order your groceries, or auto parts now. You can now order through advanced auto parts through DoorDash.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, because when you're working on your car, you may not have a car to go drive to the auto parts store.
Yes. So yeah, although I will say in the science fiction slice of life story, it only took like 20 minutes to pneumatically get flour, versus even DoorDash takes 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So that's how you know it's fiction, is it was quick. So one day, but still, we are living in the future. We can actually get quick home delivery of all sorts of things at affordable prices. Presumably affordable. So just throwing that out there, it is possible to put science fiction into any story, including slice of life contemporary type stories. Fantasy stories, you can have a little bit of science in there, and in fact, it's kind of disappointing people don't. Yes, I did too. I mean, we're getting some of it. And there's like, we're talking romance, which you'll find The Trail's End, that short film, actually has a bit of a romance bend to it. And so, like, you can inflect a little bit of science fiction into any kind of story that you're writing. It's something to think about. There are reasons to do it that will interest your reader, and we'll talk about that next week. And also, I really think y'all are going to enjoy these 3 science fiction films, even if they're not normally your cup of tea, because honestly, Trail's End has kind of this noir feel to it. Genghis Khan Conquers the Moon. Y'all, already you're going to know this is a wild ride. Ancient Mongolia to the moon. There's wizards in it. Okay. And Spice Frontier. Everybody knows that foodie cook. I'm just saying. So I think you're going to enjoy watching them, period. We'd love if you could watch it before Monday. But even if you watch them afterwards, I hope you'll stay around for our analysis. And then as usual, Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we're going to get ready for Monday's show on our Twitch channel on Glory Writes the Blues on Twitch. And Thursday, there will be Coffee Bunny Cafe at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Twitch is Self-Care Saturday. Yes, we like to wear the facial mask and do all sorts of self-care things. Huh?
I said I just bought some today.
Yes.
I bought
excellent.
2 more. I don't know if I'll be home in time to join you guys because I'll be at the library all day. But
right? But I hope you can join us. But yeah, we're going to hang out together, do a little self-care, do just hang out, chit-chat. We do still sprints for those who wish to be productive or, take a break. So it's a fun Saturday. So we hope you'll join us for that. Carrie, do you have any schedule that you want to tell everybody about?
I'm going to try and stream on Wednesday. I want to get back into doing productivity sprints. And I've been enjoying the gaming streams I've been doing before Coffee Bunny on Thursdays. And then I'm up to, what is it now? Episode 30. Episode 37 dropped on Friday of my my Vela project. And if you don't want to support Amazon, or if you're not in the United States, it's available on my Ko-fi page. Because I don't think they've expanded it outside the country yet.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, it was just like a month or two ago that they can now have it on the Kindle app. So it could be 10 years from now that we'll get it in other countries.
Mm-hmm. So there's Carrie's Vela link. And her Ko-fi link.
I'm sorry, Spence.
Well, Spence has got a birthday party she's dealing with right now, so understand.
So much to do at once.
Yeah, she's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course there's Tom. Tom's links are down below in the doobity-doo.
And if y'all want to see us after this, we'll be in the Discord.
We'd love to have you join us and hang out with us. I'll be playing Don't Starve Together, and I don't know what everyone else will be doing, but they'll be doing things. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.